Alright, so I am back at it again. I'm just gonna get into it, which I'm not really gonna just get into it, but hey, last video I had a ton of fun making it. Um, my girlfriend watched it, she had fun watching it, so hey, I'll make another, if not just for her and myself. But yeah, plenty of people saw it, couple dozen, which that's like a couple dozen more than I expected, so I'm just happy for that. But we just did ice, time to do fire. Ice sucked. We know ice sucked. Fire, however, is great. So we got a way too long presentation and ranking of all of the Wizard 101 fire spells. And, rules of the road. I upped the music and the editing quality, so I got to regain the extra effort that I spent on that somewhere else. So for me, I just kind of copped out with this slide. If you watched the first video, which, hey, if not, maybe go watch it. The quality of that video is very slapped together. I think I put a lot more effort into this one, but, I'll briefly go over the criteria in the next slide. But, it's just the same verse, better than the first. So, we got another medium in the background for now. I'll change it with every tier. Intro and F tier are going to have another medium going. But yeah. So, just a quick rundown. In case you didn't watch the ice list, go do that. But to summarize, we are doing this in a PvE framing exclusively. So not PvP at all. It might be mentioned every now and again just for, funsies. I was going to say something else, but I don't think I'm allowed to swear for the first minute or something. And no spell elements will be considered. Most of the spellments for fire are kind of iffy. Some of the ice ones are actually quite good. The fire ones are very PvP centered, I would say. But yeah, no spellments are considered. As I've been playing through on my ice after the ice list, I think it is possible to get the first tick of spellments for most spells if you do a little side questing. But yeah, I still don't really want to consider them, because I'm not entirely sure you can get them without it. My ice is blessed, and my storm has been farming stuff, so my ice, all of his 2 through 6 spellments are maxed out. His frost giant is second to last tier. Snow angel is upgraded once. Because yeah, when I made the ice list, my ice was pre-Dragonspire or beginning of Dragonspire, I can't remember. Now, my ice is level 78 as of recording in Avalon. 52 universal resist. He has a perfect pet, double pet XP for the whole month. Oof, that carried. Because yeah, he's got a mighty triple double pet. 17 universal resist, 25 damage. You love to see it. But, that's besides the point. But yeah, we're not considering spellments. I think it's technically possible, like I said, but I don't know. It's just not really worth considering. Basic blades, traps, set shields were not considered. I forgot last time to write it, and this time as well. But bubbles are also not considered. Every school's bubble's the same, with the exception of life and death. Their special bubbles will be mentioned if I get to them. The next list would probably be Storm, just to, set out the Elemental series, but, but, yeah, those weren't considered. Well, they were considered in the aspect of working with spells, but, every school's blades, every school's traps are fantastic spells. Set shields are situational, but when they're good, they're very good. They're decent pip builders. Do I need to tell you Fire Blade is the best fire spell? No. Damage spells were ranked based on Fire's damage per pip of 107.54, or simply 110. Ice's, if you remember, was, I want to say 89.7, which rounded to 90. So a very substantial increase of average damage per pip. That means for a 5 pip spell, on average, it's doing 100 more damage. So, there you go. Healing spells, however, were still ranked on Pixie's healing per pip of 200, because everybody gets Pixie. 2 pips, 400 healing with Arch Mastery, it can be 1 pip very easily. That's just a very easy baseline criteria. other school spells will be mentioned regardless of synergy or lack thereof. The prominent one here is going to be Feint, because yeah, Fire is, I should say, the damage over time school, so they have a lot of damage over times, which do not work well with Feint. So a lot of spells were counted off and docked for that, but DOTs have their own advantages, if you remember the ice list, so... So yeah, spells were ranked on damage per pip and or healing per pip, because welcome to Fire. Fire has 3 spells that do damage and heal at the same time. Those are actually Fire's only healing spells, but they do both simultaneously, and damage per pip and healing per pip were completely empiric subjects and categories. I had no control of the score in terms of damage per pip and healing per pip. They were compared to the average DPP. I have a formula for it where I take their damage per pip, divide it by the average damage per pip, and then divide it by 2, and that gives me a number from 0 to 100. And if it was above 100, it would just be rounded down to 100. But yes, there are some spells that do damage and heal, where prior on the ice list, they only did one or the other. So for ice, it was just one or the other, but fire, those spells that do both get points in both categories. As you'll later see, not that great of points, but they do get points in both, and that does kind of push them up the list, even if I wish they weren't up the list as far as they are, but you know, with the exception of one of them. But yeah, they're ranked on that. Their consistency in their damage. If a spell has a damage range above 25% from minimum compared to maximum, it would get a 0 in that category. If it had perfect consistency, it would get a 25. And for every percent it was away from 0, it would lose a point. So you could get anywhere from 0 to 25 points. Damage per pip, healing per pip, or 0 to 100. So this consistency stat is mentioned. It's not the most important, but 25 points is 25 points. That can be the difference maker. Furthermore, with the data crunching this time, I did not round to the nearest 10th. I rounded to the nearest 100th. And I think that actually did come into play at some point or another. I can't remember. But for ice, I was rounding to the nearest 10th. Here, I rounded to the nearest 100th. And there you go. Just a little bit more specific in terms of the data. A spell was ranked on its relevance when obtained, so how useful it is when you get it, and thereafter, so how useful does it maintain itself after you get it. Great example is a spell like Sunbird. Actually, that's a terrible example. A great example is like... wow, yeah, Fire does struggle in this aspect, doesn't it? Yeah. Firecat, there you go. Firecat, when you get it, I mean, it's the only spell you have, so very relevant. But once you have better spells, it falls off, and it's very often just taken out of your deck entirely. So yeah, there's that. That was also 0 to 100. And the utility the spell provides. And utility is not just, does it do something besides damage? Damage on its own can very much be a utility. You know, the definition of the word utility is serving several roles or functions, and sometimes the only function you need is damage. So if a spell does damage in such a massive way or in such a specific way, then it might rank very, very high in utility despite being just pure damage. But yeah, the utility a spell provides is also ranked on a spell or a scale of 0 to 100. In some ways, you can think of utility as the general usefulness of a spell. So there you go. Thinking about use cases, etc., etc. Once again, 0 to 100. So you put the DPP and or HPP, the utility, the relevance, and the consistency all together, and you can get a maximum of 325. Technically, it could go up to 425 now that we have spells with damage per pip and healing per pip considered, but to do that, you'd have to heal 400 DPP or healing per pip, and you'd also have to do like a 215 damage per pip. And a spell like that thankfully doesn't exist, and it shouldn't exist, so... but yeah. AoE spells, as a final note, had their damage per pip multiplied by 2. Once again, Tempest is better than Judgment. I don't think anyone will argue with that. So that is exactly why. This unfortunately led to a spell getting way higher than it should have, but it's kind of an objective point of that spell really isn't that bad, even though nobody likes it. But, you know, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Before we begin, Fire is a school I am significantly more familiar with than Ice, and because of that, a lot of my rankings were a whole lot more harsh than Ice spells. When I made the Ice list, I want to say my Ice didn't even have Colossus yet. I think he was level 40 or 41. And also my Ice was spoiled with Spellment, so his Blighthound actually wasn't terrible, but it still wasn't as good as Frostbite. But, you know, I am significantly more familiar with Fire. My Fire Wizard I have on my account is the oldest Wizard on that account that's still breathing to this day. I mean, I've had plenty in the past that have been deleted and abracadabraed, etc., but my Fire is my oldest Wizard to still be on my account. Yeah, put it simply, because I want to say my Fire was I mean, I'm 22 right now, and I want to say my Fire was probably around when I was 15 or 16, so probably like 7, 8 years old. Once again, my account was 8 years ago, sorry. Once again, my account was made in 2010, so I've been playing for a long, long time. Some might say too long, but hey, I mean, I like Wizard101. But yeah, there is an integral difference between Fire and Ice, and that's Ice is the tankiest school per resist and kind of sort of per HP. Whereas Fire is made of glass in comparison. Fire isn't as weak as Storm. In fact, they're a good chunk tankier than Storm. But yeah, Fire is pretty damn weak. So Ice didn't have healing spells, but they kind of didn't need healing spells because they could just sit there, tank, blade, trap, do whatever. They have lower damage, sure, but you know, if you have more time to put more buffs, then you end up doing more damage, even with lower damage per pip and lower damage from gear. Fire is quite squishy, so some spells that do, you know, offense and defense at the same time are ranked a little higher than you might expect. Ice didn't have all too many of those, surprisingly, which is something you would kind of associate with the school, but a lot of that is through Spellements. But yeah, Fire is a much more faster paced game. Not only in you do way more damage, but you also take more damage and you have less health to take that damage with. So that is something that is going to come into play with these spells, and it's going to be that angle in which I kind of consider it. Secondly, Snow Angel should have been in B tier. Per the numbers, Snow Angel should have been in B tier. I grouped it in the very top of C tier. It should have been in B tier. My Ice has Snow Angel now, and honestly, I mean, I run 2 copies of it in my boss deck because yeah, it hits hard. A blade or 2 put into that, it hits harder than Frost Giant. It's not half bad. It still has the taunt too, which is something I didn't realize because it doesn't say it on the card. But yes, it still has the taunt mechanic, which makes it way better than I thought it was, because that just puts so much utility in one card. Because yeah, if you do that, you're breaking shields on all enemies, you're taunting all enemies, and you're doing a fair bit of damage on all enemies. But yeah, that's a blunder on the Ice tier list. If I remake it, which maybe I will because that video was kind of garbage, I will remedy that. So yeah, we got 42 non-treasure card spells to rank. So, you know, let's just hop into this. Also, for those that just listen to the video on a second tab, or maybe while you're falling asleep, I'll provide some more music variety to reduce the monotony. You know, if you enjoy this video, leave a like. If you don't enjoy the video, leave a dislike. I want to know your opinion. Subscribe if you want more. And I have no clue what school should be next. I mean, I'm leaning towards Storm, but at the same time, my familiarity with Storm is kind of eh, because I've always preferred Fire in terms of gameplay. But yeah, that's probably probably my next step. Alright. Alright, so the intro actually took like a solid 15 minutes, so I decided to get a change of pace with the song. First one was Another Medium, I think I mentioned that, or maybe that was in the outtake, I don't remember, because yeah, I muffed up the intro, but hey, it was funny. But yeah, Another Medium, Fire, kind of tangentially related. This is just Duty from Fire Emblem Awakening, because this is my duty to get through this beautiful set of spells that is this F tier. Because, man, I mean, the bad spells of Fire are arguably better than Ice's bad spells, but I don't know. Especially relative, to like, I mean, hey, it's Ice. What are you gonna do? Fire, I mean, like, there's so many better spells, but, I mean, we gotta eat our vegetables before we get our dessert. I mean, these spells suck. They're awful. There's a lot of utility spells here, which is odd. It's kind of not what I expected, but as I like looked back, I'm like, oh yeah, those are all spells that my level 150 Fire has that he has never wants to use, with maybe like 2 exceptions. But yeah, I mean, welcome to Fire, asshats. Buckle up. Okay, I mean, number 42, this is last place. It's Fire Elemental. For those who don't know, this is the worst minion in the game, and I don't think there is any argument otherwise. I'm thinking in my head, I unironically rather have the 0-pip Golem minion from Myth, because at least that costs me nothing. I rather have a 1-pip Troll from Myth, because at least that costs 1 pip. I rather have the Minotaur minion from Myth. That's how low of a bar this is. It's so bad. Just like Ice, it's your level 28 spell. We talked about Ice's minion in the last list, and it actually made it decently far up. You know, it wasn't bad. Because that minion's based, and it just sits there and does damage. And what does Ice need most? It needs damage. Okay, well, what does Fire need? Maybe some support, maybe healing, maybe shields. You know, just like spitballing, maybe a minion that haunts or something. Oh wait, I just described Water Elemental. My bad. I mean, like, this minion is so bad. I had to, like, look it up on the wiki to, like, what even is this garbage's spell list? Because I've been using him quite a bit on my lower level balance recently, begrudgingly, because I put in Spectral Minion because it's fun. Anytime I get him, it's such a disappointment. I've seen him predominantly like use his stupid single target smokescreen that's bad. And I've occasionally seen him Fire Elf. I'm like, does he not have like Sunbird or anything? He has Fire Elf and Link as its only 2 attacks. That is it. That is it. Besides that, it'll like sprite itself sometimes, might sprite you. Fire shield, set shield, cool. I don't know, dude. I mean, Water Elemental is pretty bad, but at least that minion like taunts. That minion has health, it has 700 HP, Fire Elemental has 400. Ice Elemental had 400 HP too. But Ice Elemental was good because it does damage and it'll actually take aggro. So sometimes 400 HP isn't actually what it's worth. Fire Elemental, dude, it could have 1 billion HP and it wouldn't matter. It's just so worthless. It does nothing. It does nothing. It's just a waste of 3 pips. If you passed and gained a pip that round instead, you would have at least 4 pips. Not going to spoil anything, but Fire has like a really, really good spell for 4 pips that you get before this spell. So it's just like, I don't know. Ice Elemental is an investment on Ice. You pay 3 pips and he will periodically do damage over time. And, you know, he adds traps, he adds blades, takes aggro, he has good spells. I mean, what's the excuse of Fire Elemental? Did they not update the spell? Like, they did, right? Like, surely? I don't know. It's so bad. It's so bad. I'm just at a loss for words. It scored 60 points. I forgot to mention, spells that don't do damage or heal got a free 50 points because they had no healing per pip or damage per pip, so they just received an average score. What's 60 minus 50? 10. This spell got 10 points that weren't just free gimme. And it still got last. It is so bad. It deserves its place here, and I don't know. I don't know what else to say. It's atrocious. Next spell. Speaking of atrocious spells, hey, I mean, at least this GIF is like 8,000 frames per second better, but like still. Does Backdraft really deserve to be this low? Do I Ifrit the boss, doing 800 damage and implying a weakness? Or do I 8 pip Backdraft? Well, I mean, that's like 2 feints combined, right? I mean, like, surely that's a... And the answer is yes. Yes, it does. Backdraft has one use. One use. Actually, 2. The first and most prominent use is that 1 in a million. You can stack 14 pips and then do 14 times 15 to the next spell on the golem construct that you're fighting in Golem Court. I mean, you can do that. You can hit 1 in a million pretty easily even without Backdraft, but I mean, hey, it's there, I guess, if you want the badge at like level 20 or something. But I mean, oh man, this spell makes me upset. Like, it flies under the radar so much, and I don't understand why. Maybe it's because it's an Avalon spell, and those in general are just kind of like, eh. So, like, maybe, you know, Backdraft hides behind, like, Meltdown, or whatever it's called, Cooldown. Yeah, Backdraft hides behind Cooldown, it hides behind Supercharge. It's like, oh, I'm not that bad, guys. It is. It's awful. It's so awful. The second use that I forgot to talk about earlier is if you're running a duo strat, like, and you want to do a ton of damage to a boss, but they have like a feint immune cheat or something, you can burn all your pips. And hey, I mean, if you're in a Discord call with somebody and you can like actually set that up and synergize, that's great. Try doing that with randoms, see what happens. See what happens. I don't know about you. I mean, like, I'm not even toxic. Like, I like playing with random people. I accept mistakes and all that. I don't want to just, like, burn all my pips and leave the rest of the battle in their hands. 9 times out of 10, I'm sure it goes fine, but I could have just used those pips to hit myself, and it would have done better. I mean, I don't know. Snow Angel is so hated, and it honestly doesn't deserve it. Backdraft, I hardly see discussed. And I think it's because it just doesn't stand out. It's just, like, so unbelievably bad that it just sits in its little sad corner. Nobody even talks about it. I mean, unironically, you may as well just flee from the battle instead of using it, because you're using all your pips on something that isn't an attack. I mean, you're not trying to LTC or anything, but you're fire. You don't have all the time in the world, and if you're just gonna set your pips back to 0, it's like, I don't know, there's so many better uses for the pips. If you, like, maybe you were like, oh, maybe you just use it with a few pips on. 2 pip Backdraft is the same as a fire trap, which is free. It's just like, I don't know. And like, yeah, look at the GIF. It's so funny. 5 pips for a feint. Feint is 1 pip, guys. I know it puts a trap on you, but like, the time saved is worth the 30% extra damage from the next incoming hit. Always. Always. Even if you are, like, going to die from that 30% increase, you would have died anyways from all that time you're losing by backdrafting. So it's just like, I don't know. It's so bad. You know, if Backdraft has a million haters, I am the #1 hater. If Backdraft has no haters, then I am unfortunately gone from this mortal coil. It's so awful. I don't know, like, I really racked my brain with this one. It's so bad. It's so bad. there's so many better things you could do with your pips and your time. Because, like, X spells are exclusively interesting in that they use all your pips at once, no matter what. So, I mean, you think about Tempest, that's, like, the best spell in the game, but that's because what you get for your pips is insane. It just gets better with how many pips you use it. Backdraft does too, technically, but, like, also kind of not. Because Backdraft is essentially sedimentary in that, you know, you get 15% per pip, and that's it. Tempest, you as a Storm have damage gear, so the more pips you build up, the more your damage increases exponentially, because then you're multiplying that damage by whatever damage your gear is running. Backdraft is static, never changes. Heckhound, we'll see you later, increases exponentially with your damage and your gear, so on and so forth. Judgment, so on and so forth. Not Backdraft. So bad. So bad. Even for Avalon spells, like, I don't know if it's the worst, but it very well could be. I mean, like, I'm trying to rack my brain to even think about what Avalon spells exist, but it's worse than Cooldown. At least Cooldown, like, has a finite amount of pips it wastes. Backdraft, oh, man. It's bad. Alright, so now we got number 40, we got Take Power. I'm not sure if you were paying attention to the numbers in the parentheses. Those are the scores, by the way, I'm sorry. I think I haven't mentioned that. But we're not really going up too fast. In the Ice tier list, there was a big gap between, like, well, I guess no spoilers, last place and everything else. But Take Power, I mean, it's just so questionable. It's from a secret trainer, so I mean, like, do you even get this spell? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know, but, like, it's so weird. It's... I see the purpose. Yeah, future me... Screw you, past me, instead of, like, writing an actual script for me to work off of. I mean, like, so the use case is, like, you have, God forbid, a Fire Elemental out, and it somehow takes aggro and then eats a hit, and it's about to die anyways, so you take power and you gain your pips back, essentially. So pretty much the minion was free the entire time you had it, except it wasn't, because it was Fire Elemental and it sucked, and it prevented you from trapping the entire time you had it out and did nothing of value. But I mean, I guess we'll, like, skip ahead a little bit. Maybe it's Sir Lamorak. But even then, you're not getting your pips back at that point, because Sir Lamorak is 5 pips, and Take Power gives you 3. But Take Power also costs a pip. Another spell that costs a pip and gives you 3 pips is Empower. And Empower has no condition. It does a little bit of damage to you, which is mostly benefit, especially on a fire, because you're not going to have death damage. So, I mean... just run Empowers. I mean, Empowers are in the Bazaar all the time. They are expensive, don't get me wrong, but, like, if you ever really needed pips as fire, I think you would just Empower rather than Take Power. It just kind of boggles the mind. But like I said, it is funny to run on a myth, because I'm pretty sure treasure cards of this exist, and I'm pretty sure you can train this on any school, just via the secret trainer. And I mean, if you're on myth, as the GIF is showing, you can create the wooden construct and sacrifice it for a pip. And since it's a 0 pip minion, I mean, you just got free pips. I mean, that's cool. It takes 2 turns to do that and 2 cards to do that, but, like, you could. I don't know why you would. On myth, I think it does have more niche just to do that stuff with, but I'm pretty sure there's another Take a Power like spell. I'm not sure if it's the Storm one or the Death one. Not the Death one. Storm one or the Balance one, maybe, where it, like, sacrifices them and gives you 4 pips. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but I mean, if it gave you 4 pips instead of 3 pips, it still wouldn't be that much better. It'd be a little bit higher, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it is what it is. Okay, 39, Choke. with 75 points, so a little bit better than the prior one. My mic didn't cut out. I'm just kind of at a loss of words for Choke, too. I mean, like I noted here, it's kind of funny that it made the exact same amount of places up unless as Ice is done did. But, I mean, like... I don't know. Like, what do I say? I mean, like, in dungeons, I guess it has, like, the smallest utility of you can stun the minions 1 round, 1 time per battle. Maybe you can do some, like, stun chain shenanigans, but no boss will ever be able to be stunned. So then you're just burning 2 pips. I don't know. It's not that great. There are a lot of better things you could do with 2 pips. I mean, we're just getting back to that of there are better things you could do with 2 pips. Yes, there are, especially for the School of Fire. I mean, at least Freeze was free. Choke is oddly more accurate. It's so weird because Freeze was 70% accurate for Ice and Choke was 80% for Fire, which Fire's standard accuracy is 75%. So, okay, I guess, but, cool. I mean, what do I say? What do I say? You know, I put a lot of text on this slide. Jeez. I don't know. I don't know what to say. It's bad. It's bad. It's in F tier for a reason. It's bad. Still more useful than Fire Elemental, because at least you're only wasting 2 pips instead of 3. And, hey, maybe it does something for you at some point or another. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean... Some of these bottom tier fire spells are really hard to talk about, and that's because I never use them, because they're awful. I mean, like, Fire Elemental, at least I could talk about how terrible it was and how much I hate it, but, like, Choke, I mean, it's self-explanatory. It's just really, really bad. Next slide. Now, here we go. Here's something more fun. Is Nautilus Unleashed. With just a fraction more points than Choke. Like I said, the 100th did matter. Which I guess if I rounded to the nearest 10th, it would have been the same more or less. But, you know, this is a familiar spell of stealing something and then hitting. That's interesting. That kind of reminds me of another spell. Mayhaps from a previous list. I don't know. Animation's really cool. Name is really cool. But it's just so weird and not good. It's not as bad as the other familiar spell that I'm alluding to, but it's just kind of weird. We'll get into Steel Charm later, but stealing a charm is kind of not that great, and combining it with a hit sounds good on paper, but you're essentially just getting a bad Phoenix for a utility that usually doesn't do much of anything. It's kind of weird. It's weird. It's really weird. And I mean, Steel Charm has perfect accuracy. Nautilus, I mean, like, once you get to higher levels, I'm sure you'll have perfect accuracy too, but it's just kind of weird, especially because Fire has a really clogged up 5-pip spot. Ice did too. But yeah, the spell that shall not be named because it's so awful on Ice had a more applicable utility. And I'd say overall that tends to do more for you. Well, like I said, we'll get into it more with Steel Charm, but yeah, it's just, it's so questionable. It's not good. The damage doesn't look that bad, really, but this is Fire's damage per pip that we're talking about. The variance is surprisingly terrible. I don't know, it just, like, checks all the boxes of things you don't want to check. It's just not good. It's in highly contested pip category. Damage is bad, utility is bad. You know, like, overall, it's not that terrible of a spell. Maybe F tier is too harsh, but it just, when you put all that together, it's just so bad. I don't, like I said, you're competing with Phoenix in terms of damage. Which Phoenix, I think, is barely Fire's damage per pip. Nautilus is even less. Like I said, 110 is the average damage per pip of Fire. Nautilus is a good chunk below that, and for the price you pay in terms of damage, it's really not worth the utility. But instead of talking in circles about a spell with like a really cool animation, like I'm just getting distracted by the gift because the spell itself is so boring. I'm just gonna move on. So, Detonate. Yeah, here we go. Avalon. Avalon, hey, what's up? What's up, Avalon? But yeah, there is a 3-way tie in this list for 85 points, all of which are obviously in the F tier, and Detonate, I think, was the worst of those 3. Good Avalon spells do exist, and by that, I mean Mana Burn, and maybe Healing Current. Shift. Shift was good. Shift was good. Shift was Avalon, right? Yeah. I'm sure Life got something, right? Hell if I know. But this is interesting, because it's a spell that's in contention for one of the most buffed spells in Wizard101 history, and it's still awful. Unlike all of the previously mentioned spells, at least Detonate just wastes the turn instead of wasting your turn and pips. Back in the day, this probably would have been right after Fire Elemental. Because Detonate used to be 4 pips to detonate in overtime. 4 pips, which is so hilarious. It is now 0 pips, so it is just, hey, you know, it's my damage and I want it now. But the use case for Detonate is kind of questionable, which is funny because Fire is the damage over time school, but in general, there's not too many of the DOTs you'd want to detonate. Especially with the most recent update as of this time of recording, which is June 27th, but I think there was an update today as well, but which I haven't checked out. Most damage over times that were like kind of high risk, high reward were made into multiple ticks. A great example is Burning Rampage. Used to do like a little bit of damage and then had like a delayed huge damage, which counts as a damage over time that you could detonate. Unless it doesn't work with bombs, I don't know. I'm sure it did at some point or another. But yeah, that did a lot of damage, but it was delayed. So that's one of those things where like, oh yeah, maybe you do want to detonate that. That's an interesting idea. Nowadays, I don't know. Ramp is split into 2. FFA is split into 3. Fire Elf? I think the best use case, without a doubt, is Heckhound. But even then, once the first tick goes, and the first tick is guaranteed to go because you cast the spell, and then you detonate, you only have the 2 ticks left, and at that point, is it really even worth detonating? Maybe, maybe not. I'd rather just Blade or Shield, Trap even, because then it's doing more damage. But I don't know. It is really bad. That's why it's in F tier, but it's not like offensively bad like some of the prior ones. I have plenty to say about it, at least, because there are a lot of interesting ideas with Detonate. It kind of goes back into the backdraft. What if you ran the game with another Fire Wizard? Which, I mean, like, I guess you could do that, but if you run the game with anybody else and you have communication, everything is a cakewalk. It doesn't matter what schools you are. You could be running 2 ices together. And as long as you have communication with somebody that you know, the game is incredibly easy. So, like, yeah, you could backdraft and then, like, do a super mega hit or whatever, or you could do a Heckhound and then immediately detonate it. Like, oh man, that's so cool. I mean, hypothetically, even if you do that with Heckhound, I mean, that's great and all, but it's just like a 30% better judgment. So, I mean, you could have just had your friend be a balance and judgment while you also Heckhound, and that would have been better. I mean, I guess that's not free, but still. This got the short end of the stick of the 3 that were tied, because, yeah, in general, Detonate really doesn't do anything. It's a pass that takes up a card slot in your deck. Is what it is. It's sad, because Detonate has some potential, but I don't know. And oddly enough, it's more useful on Myth, because Myth has a lot of bombs nowadays. Or detonate. I don't know what they're called. They're bombs. That's what the hieroglyphic symbol is bombs. So, yeah. I don't know. Fires, their ticks do consistent damage, and that's great. So detonating them is kind of just like, I mean, you could. You can't really use it with traps unless you, like, fuel or double feint, God forbid. Because if you're double feinting something, you should just feint stacked. And I mean, I guess you can double feint detonate before you can feint stack, but Avalon and Aztec are neighboring worlds, so I mean, like, cool. You know, whatever. I talked about the use cases. I did my job. Next slide. So now we're at Steel Charm, so I can talk a little bit more about Steel Charm, the effect. Nautilus was 5 pips, did about 4 pips per fire damage worth of damage, arguably a little bit more than 4 pips. No, actually, yeah, it was about there, a little bit more. And then it had Steel Charm, so it's like 4 plus 1 makes it worth it. But does it really? So Steel Charm in its own right gets higher because 1, it's 100% accurate. And 2, it does have microscopic niches that are only possible because it's only 1 pip. The one that, like, immediately comes to mind is Lore Master. If you go second in Lore Master fight, you can steal the universal blade they get. And I mean, hey, that's cool, that's great. Otherwise, I mean, it's a utility that does nothing for you 6 out of 8 times. And I mean, going back to the ice list, Steel Ward was pretty high up there. But that's because when Steel Ward is useful, it's really useful. When Steel Charm is useful, I mean, like, it's neat, I guess. Maybe you run one in side deck. You could just weakness. You could just weakness, and it does the same thing practically. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm incorrect with 6 out of 8 times, because, you know, I was thinking Shadow Blade, you steal that, it does nothing. I mean, you could use Shadow Magic. You're not going to use Shadow Magic to hit. But, you know, I mean, if you act second, it's completely unreliable, whereas Steel Ward is always useful. First, second, doesn't matter. If your enemy has a ward, unless they, like, immolate, they're not going to get rid of it. That's not even really in their power to get rid of their own wards. But Steel Charm, if you're second and the enemy has a blade, I mean, like, they could just use that blade, and then when your turn comes around, you Steel Charm, you just wasted a pip. It would have been better if you passed, unironically. But hey, if you're first, your enemy Fire Blades or Balance Blades, Shadow Blade, I guess, you know, you can yoink that, and that's cool, and even if they're not, it's kind of like a pseudo-weakness, because when you add 35% to 100, you get 135%. So if you take it, you go back to 100%. Whereas if you had 135%, then minus 25% of that, I believe it's like about the same. It's slightly worse because it's minus 25% of the original 100 and the 35, because that's how multiplication works. But so it's like kind of like a pseudo weakness, and I mean, like, hey, that's cool, but you could have just weaknessed for free. And if you have a treasure card weakness, which, hey, those aren't hard to get at all, that's a minus 30, and that's better than stealing their 35 blade because of how multiplication works. Like I said, it is higher than Nautilus for its cheap cost, and it's very, very niche utility. Because, I mean, Nautilus, what are you going to do? Like, God forbid, like, you're second with Nautilus, and you're hoping they don't use that blade before you steal it. And if you do, I mean, hey, at least you didn't waste your turn like Steel Charm, but you wasted 5 pips on something you could have done something much better with. So, yeah, I don't know. Even with Steel Charm, if you're stealing anything but a Balance Blade, it's probably not going to be useful, because if you steal a Fire Blade, it's going to be an enemy Fire Blade, which is to say a standard deck, which, I mean, you're Fire. You should be blading whenever you can at all given times, so you probably have one, so it's not going to stack, but, I mean, if you need hit twice, there you go, I guess, but I don't know. Actually, I think Fire has the niche utility of it can steal Elemental Blades as well, but enemies don't tend to use elemental blades all that much. Some balanced mobs can, and even then it's rather rare. Because, yeah, I believe the first blade of elemental blade is the fire blade, so I think you can steal that, but I don't know. I mean, it's a fun spell, don't get me wrong, it is fun. I like Steel Charm, but I don't know. Would it really be that much of a buff to make it 0 pips? I know that sounds absurd on paper, but I don't know, you know, slap a no PvP on it, and then I suddenly think that's okay, honestly. Because, yeah, I mean, in PvP, you just Steel Blade after Blade. Even that doesn't sound that great, because people just triple Blade. I think could still get overwhelmed. I don't know. But it's interesting. It is interesting. And, you know, that's why it's above Detonate, because it has its niche utilities. You know, when it's good, it's cool. Yeah, I don't know. Is what it is. And we are finishing out F tier with Smokescreen. I dubbed it the best of the worst in the 3-way tie Smokescreen. 1 pip, which I'm pretty sure it used to be 2, but I mean, like, not even that big of a difference. And you put a -40 mantle on all enemies. And I think this is undoubtedly better than Choke because it can actually affect bosses. But in general, I'm not a huge mantle fan. I don't know. Like, if you're spending 1 pip on something, I mean, you could just, like, TC Plague, which I think it doesn't hit 25%, but even if it's just -20, it's better than Smokescreen by a lot. But, you know, it's like, Smokescreen's almost not worse than passing. I mean, even if you're supporting on fire, which, like, why the hell would you be? That's one of the worst schools to support with. I don't know. I'd rather just pass and build up the pip for something else. What would a support fire even use? I guess Smokescreen. So, like, oh, never mind. My bad for you support fire wizards out there. All 0 of you. And that's coming from me, who wants to make every school support that can be a support. But, yeah, I don't know. It gets the best of the worst award. You know, points where points are due. But yeah, the reason why mantles suck, and I mean, if I ever make a balance list, this will come up again. My balance, the second he learned Black Mantle, maybe ran 1, if even, and he no longer runs them. Because I always rather weakness over mantling. Because mantling gives the enemy about a coin flip to fizzle their spell. So a coin flip to buy you a turn, which is neat. But at the end of the day, they're not using their pips, they're just having their turn skip. So that means on that following turn, they're just going to use those pips to hit you with a bigger hit, which is almost always worse. Especially in Arc 1, I rather the enemy just spam Dark Sprites on me instead of using, like, Skeletal Pirate or Wraith or something like that. Because, yeah, enemies will, like, just spam traps and blades and then use them on stupid crap like Sprites. So if you make them fizzle, you're actually, like, encouraging them to use higher pip spells. So I don't know, that's usually not very good. I would say for some enemies it does have its use, but in general you don't really want to bank on RNG. If you want to buy yourself a turn, it's really not worth it. You rather heal, you rather shield. Weakness, very good spell, hint hint. I don't know. I mean, Smokescreen, if you want to compare Mantle to weakness, because, you know, Mantle is 45, weakness is -25. Smokescreen has the same comparison to Plague, whereas Plague is 1 pip, -20% to all enemies. Smokescreen is -40. I rather Plague every single day. A consistent -20% to their next outgoing spell is much better. You know, let's go back to the Dark Sprite hypothetical. I rather them burn the -20 on a Dark Sprite, which doesn't really do much. But that means, hey, they use their pip and their spell is worse off. That's great. Versus if I Smokescreen and then they decide to, I don't know, Leprechaun or something the next turn. That's going to do more damage overall. But, yeah, I don't know. It is the best of the worst, and I can see some microscopic use for the spell. For me, personally, I think it's pretty awful, and that's why it's an F tier. But yeah, let's move on out. Alright, yeah, we're hopping back into this. We changed the music every tier now, isn't that crazy? This is Flame Man's theme from Mega Man 6. Absolute banger. Good game, too. Not my favorite Mega Man, that's Mega Man 3. And that's excluding, like, you know, X series, all that, because, I mean, probably X2, maybe X4. I don't feel like getting persecuted today. Then again, maybe I am, because, oh man, there's some spells that should be in E or F tier that aren't, but hey, we'll get there. But yeah, topic at hand, E tier. We got some spells that might do something, but they probably won't, because these spells are bad too. It's just F tier spells were really, really bad for fire. But you know, these spells exist. And don't you dare mention spellments, because most of the fire spellments suck anyways. So like, these spells are bad, just through and through. But they're not awful. That's the best way to put E tier. So we got Glacial Golem. Great way to kick off E tier, or if like a spell that's like you'll never catch me calling this spell awful, but it's not good. Especially not for fire. Now, Ice's Golem, what was it, Volcano Golem? That one wasn't half bad, and that's kind of because Ice's set shield of Fire and Storm isn't too bad. And Glacial Golem increases the damage range, whereas Volcanic Golem actually decreases it. It's really weird how they do that. Because Glacial Golem does the same average damage as Sunbird, but with more variance, which is like, why? The variance is really, really bad with this spell. 10% of 27.5, or 275 is 27.5. I mean, that's a lot of variance, man. When we're talking 10% is what, 55 damage, or 20% is, we're well above that 25% threshold. Huge variance, it's really bad. In PvP, people bitch and moan about it, because fire really shouldn't have a hit and shield. I agree. Storm Wizards, they just need more nerfs, honestly, and I mean, I love it for that, but this is a player versus enemy list, and in PvE, it's not that great. There are better options for 4 pips, and if you really want the set shield, just use the set shield. Ice, you have the niche of, hey, I mean, if you want to hit, break a weakness, break a shield, get a useful set shield, I guess so. Fire kinda can, but the damage variance is so bad it doesn't do that very well either. Because, I mean, if you're hitting with a weakness through a shield, you're not expecting to do much damage anyways. But the problem is fire is the damage over time school. So you have many options around shields. Weaknesses not as much. And in general, you kind of do just have to hit. But then at that point, do you really want to spend 4 pips to get rid of that weakness? You could wand hit, which is something we haven't mentioned in this list. Wand hits are kind of thought about. They haven't really come into play for the ice list because you can't enchant a wand hit, obviously, which is why Snow Serpent was so great. But I don't know, Glacial Golem is just in this really weird spot. If you want to burn a weakness in a shield, I guess so, but you could just Fire Elf, Fire Cat, Wand Hit, lots of better options. You're just better off just saving the pips, and like I said, if you really want the shield, just use the shield, just pack the shield. You know, playing offense while playing defense is good, but you don't play the offense very well. And I mean, the defense is great, don't get me wrong. Situational, of course, because it's a set shield, but I don't know. This is where, like, that balance of offense and defense at the same time just is kind of falling flat. It doesn't do the damage part very well, and the defense part is fine, but there's a significantly better and free alternative. So, I mean, 106.93, triple digits, much better than the 85.3-way tie we had in F tier, which is why this is the first spell of E tier. I kind of cracked down on that after the Snow Angel incident. These tiers are grouped up empirically. Even if I think one belongs somewhere else, no more biases. Snow Angel deserved better. Much better. Because I didn't even know about the taunt. I would have probably pepped it up even more, but, you know, that's the ice list. This is the fire list. Glacial Golem. Bad. Next spell. Sunbird. Hey. Hey, Sunbird. We were just talking about you. Hey, even look. The Gifs the same dude in the exact same place. Ain't that crazy? Or is he one slot over? No, it's the exact same spot. Ain't that something? But yeah, this one hurts. Because, I mean, hey, at least you don't have the stupid variance problems of the Golem. And it's just 3 pips, straight up damage. Great damage for 3 pips. On average, it's actually a little bit below Fire's DPP. But the reason why it's so low is because of how ungodly outclassed it is. This spell is dead on arrival. Call it Fallout Boy, because, yeah, Fire Elf does essentially average Sunbird damage, just a little under average, but it's consistent, which is its own benefit. And Fire Elf is a damage over time, so it breaks shields, which can be kind of annoying in the early game, because you don't really have, like, good ways to get around them. Fire Elf does that, which is sweet. But yeah, Fire Elf being 2 pips, while Sunbird is 3, makes a world of a difference for Fire, because Fire can Blade Fire Elf, because they get their Blade as their first school spell. And that is such a tried and true combo that will kill just about anything in Wizard City. And once you get beyond that, there are better options than Sunbird, which is really sad. I mean, it's a favorite spell of mine. I love Sunbird. I love the multiple animations. I really miss when they did that. And Fire Elf just has the one animation. But yeah, Sunbird, where it either shoots the fire or it does the thing where it just like careens into them. It's really, really cool. I don't want them to ever change the animation. It looks so great as is. It's perfect. I love Sunbird. I really do. But my Fire has Sunbird max tier with Spellments. And even then, I don't run a single copy. It's really sad. It's just so woefully outclassed. But it isn't bad. I would say Glacial, not Glacial, was it Glacial? Yeah, Glacial. Glacial Golem, I would say is bad. Sunbird, I would say is not bad. It's just, practically speaking, biases put aside, it's just not very useful. This one's sad. I'm sorry, Sunbird, but hey, better than anything in F tier. God bless. And we got Phoenix, the other Sunbird, which if you look at the decimals here, extremely close, within a point of one another. But I mean, it's Sunbird 2.0. It's extremely outclassed even when you get it. I'd say it has a little bit more relevance than Sunbird, which is why it's a little bit higher. But yeah, if you want a single target hit, you get Immolate first. And I mean, you could be like, well, Immolate hurts you. Immolate's 4 pips, Phoenix is 5. In that turn that you need to wait, you could have Fire Shielded yourself, and that's a legitimate strategy. Then Elephant exists a little bit later, and by a little bit, I mean like 9 levels, which is actually a good bit, but you probably rather just Immolate. There are some times where you can't Immolate, and hey, I mean, maybe you Phoenix, but I don't know. The damage thresholds that this spell hits when you get it are kind of just like, eh. I don't know. Quite often, as Fire, you'll end up just blading, using the M spell, no spoilers, which I mean that's 4 pips, kill a minion with it pretty easily, do damage to boss pretty heavily. At that point, you probably don't even need a Phoenix. Maybe you do, then hey, I guess it's there, but I don't know, if you really need that much damage, you Immolate. If you only need a little bit, you Elf. So on and so forth. In general, I honestly believe Sunbird is a wee bit better, but Phoenix is a little less outclassed when it enters the scene. I mean, Sunbird just, it's there, but so is Fire Elf, and it's before you get Feint, so don't even mention that. Phoenix, at least it's like, well, you could have Feint by now, maybe you want a strong single target hit. Immolate. But you know, maybe you want a single target hit that's a little more expensive, a little less powerful, but doesn't hurt you. And that's fair enough. I can see it. I wouldn't call Phoenix bad. Just like Sunbird, I wouldn't call it bad. It's just very, very heavily outclassed. And it scales terribly too, because yeah, as you get further in the game, the 5-pip slot for Fire becomes crazy clogged, and all the options are significantly better than Phoenix. You know, it's alright. Which Phoenix, I think, could use a rework on the animation. I think it looks a little goofy. The card art looks so dope. It's like really jagged and stuff, whereas like you're looking here, the animation just looks a little too feathery for me. I don't know. When I think of Phoenix, I think of like these sacred Firebird with like these cool talons and stuff, and I don't know. It just needs a little bit more. But hey, we're not judging animations. Ugh, this spell. This is one of those like lore spells that reminds me of ice lore spells where I'm like, yeah, I guess it's not terrible, but like, man, really cool animation, Krampus in general, intimidating boss. Cool animation, but hey, I mean, we already discussed why mantles aren't that great. So, I mean, per the pip, the damage per pip, I'm pretty sure Krampus hits exactly the average damage per pip, which is 440. Which is to say 110 per pip, because it's 4 pips. And then it puts a mantle on, which, I mean, like, I guess so. The problem with Krampus is it's outclassed, and nobody will ever argue for using base Krampus over that spell. Unless you're some sort of, like, crippled gambling addict. It's just, you'll never do it, because its alternative is so much better. We're talking, like, several tiers above this spell. Objectively, it's not that terrible, but, like, I don't know. Why would you ever use this? The spell minted version is a lot better, I'm pretty sure. I don't know, but, like, holiday spell, you gotta get it when you can get it, etc., etc. Oh, wait, no, you can craft Krampus. Well, you need the treasure cards, which I think are holiday as well, but, like, dude, it could have been so much more. Like, just look at this animation. It's so cool. So cool. Man, like, you know, hypothetically, what if it hit and then, like, detonated? Oh, wouldn't that be cool? Spell elements. But, you know, because, yeah, the reason why detonate's bad is because it's its own card and just does its own thing. But, I don't know, like, maybe if you hit and detonated, maybe if they made a spell that, like, hit and detonated 2 overtimes, like, wouldn't that be kind of cool? I don't know, maybe hitting it. I'm not sure if that update dropped today. Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, Krampus. It's Krampus. I think E tier is literally the perfect tier for Krampus. It's such an E tier spell where I can't be like, oh man, it's awful, it's F tier. It's just like, man, it's bad. It's not good. It's not like that bad, but it's so not good. There's so many better alternatives. I don't know. You could be like, oh, fire doesn't have like a 4-pip single target besides immolate, so you'd use it for that. But like, guys, I'm not gonna spoil it, but there's a much better spell that has the exact same pip lineup as this spell. 2 pips and a fire pip, which I haven't really mentioned the Archmastery pips. I don't really factor them in at all. Apparently they're fixing Archmastery soon, so it won't even be that much of a problem, but like, meh. If you're solo questing, it'll pretty much never come into play. Anywho, next spell. Link. Yeah, so Link, really cool concept, really cool animation. Holy man. I mean, we have healing that's like, it's literally like uncomparable to anything. Uncomparable? Is that a word? Not comparable? Oh, what's that? What's that one life spell called? Minor Blessing. You have healing comparable to Minor Blessing, which is a 0-pip spell with damage comparable to, like, Scorpion. I don't know. Link has its, like, uses of, you could use it as a pseudo fire elf that also gives you some healing. Like, if you're trying to break a shield, then hey, I guess it's not a terrible option, but like, man, we all know Link is terrible. It probably should have been lower. I would argue Sunbird Phoenix are better. But this spell is where it is because of the numbers and because of how the list is created. All in all, once you bundle it all together, it's not awful for its cost, but it's so low impact that you rather just hit or you rather just heal. Because, like, I mean, Fire Elf does almost twice the damage. I mean, if we're comparing it to Pixie's heal per pip, it's like a little over a quarter of that, which is not good. Healing over time is kind of nice early game, because sometimes you don't need a burst heal, but even then it's like, you heal, what, like 35 a round? It's so pathetic. I don't know. It's It's Link. It's so bad. Like, I'm so sorry it's this high. I mean, it is my fault. You know, I can blame the numbers, but I'm the one that set up how the numbers work as is. But, I mean, 30, that's pretty high for Link. Is Link truly, like, F-tier deserving? Maybe not. You know, maybe the numbers have convinced me. But, like, you know, is it better than Sunbird, Phoenix, Krampus even? No. But, I mean, it is a heal. Those are in high demand. I mean, heal asterisk because, like, shit, guys. 120 total healing. Ugh. I mean, you are doing damage and healing and, you know, shield breaking utility, etc., but it's a Link. It's bad. It's so bad. Alright, we are finally out of the bad tiers of spells. I mean, you could argue some of the E-tier spells weren't that bad, but they were bad. Or very, very outclassed to the point that they are kind of bad. We are now to the D tier, the spells that, I mean, they're still not good, but they're not bad either. You know, they're something. They're alright. You might run a copy, maybe, if you feel like it. I don't know. When you get them, maybe they're really good at that point in the game. Maybe, maybe not. To be determined. But yeah, in the background, we got the Magma Dragoon stage from Mega Man X4. Goated game. Best theme of that game. It's great. And, you know, it's topical. Magma, fire, it's great. So, kicking off the D tier, we have the Fire Cat, which, you know, just like Ice, we kicked off the D tier with their 1-pip spell. I mean, if I were to go back and look, there is a noticeable gap in points, and I kind of cracked down on that. So Firecat did earn its placement as the first in the D tier. But yes, Firecat's interesting. You could say the placement of it was analogous with Frost Beetle, but I would argue Firecat's quite a bit better. I mean, Frost Beetle's obviously the objective worst 1-pip spell, and we're looking at these spells in the framing of their own school. So just because Firecat's better than Frost Beetle, that doesn't mean anything. We're looking at them relative to their spells, but Firecat has all the plagues that all 1-pip spells have, which is awful variance. Firecat, unfortunately, is incredibly useless starting level 5, and it doesn't get useful until you get damage and chance. At which point, it has its niche, actually, and I would say that niche of interacting with damage and chance is something that it has that Frost Beetle does not whatsoever. Frost Beetle, even later in the game, I rather Snow Serpent, because I probably have a Power Pip. My Ice, I've been leveling on him, as I said. He has max tier spell mint. Snow Serpent feels great, never fizzling that, but that's a fantastic spell. Even without spell mints, it's a fantastic spell. I think it absolutely earned its high placement, and I use it quite frequently, even at higher levels. Firecat is kind of like that. So it's annoying that it's not a 2-pip spell and therefore kind of lacks the damage that you would expect. If Fire had a 2-pip spell that just did damage, I'd probably expect it to be slightly better than Troll. Probably like 195 to 235. That's kind of what I would expect. And if that were the given case, that would be amazing. That'd be a fantastic spell. It'd be incredible. Not to spoil anything, but Fire Elf is still incredible. It's very good. But yeah, Firecat, later on, if you want to just punch something for a cheap cost, Firecat is your best bet. Fire Elf can do that too, but the damage is split between, or a damage enchant is split between the initial damage and the overtime. So, I mean, if you have a Gargantuan and you just want to hit something, Firecat's your best bet. If you want to epic hit something, Firecat's your best bet. Quite often with Fire, a wand hit will do the trick, but sometimes you need a little bit more oomph than just a wand hit. And there you go, Firecat's right there. I mean, there's not too much else to say. I preferred the old animation. I put that in there. I think the new one's just a little much on the eyes. Just a little much. I think the older one was just like, needed some retexturing instead of all of that. But yeah, I mean, it's Firecat. Everybody loves Firecat. It's great. It's great. It does just very unfortunately fall off, and it's hard to find a use case for it. You know, when you're level 1 through 4, you know, those 20 minutes you spend in Unicorn Way or whatever, you're not too upset with using Fire Cat. 80 to 120, that's not bad. It's a pretty good amount of damage compared to, 65 to 105, which is what most schools deal with. Or Bloodbat that has like the extra 5 damage. That means quite literally nothing. Or, Storm with Thunder Snake that just hits like a dump truck. But Fire Cat is quite fantastic. It is sad about the variants pulling it down. It's sad that the damage per pip is lower. Overall, few complaints, but even at a higher level, I struggle to even put one in my deck, because yes, it does have the niche of just being a big hit for a cheap cost with an enchant, but even then, I don't know. I kind of prefer just running Fire Elf. That's definitely a preference, but I kind of do prefer running Fire Elf. Next slide, clap emoji. We have Sir Lamorak, and I forgot to put in the number. I don't know. It's like probably 125-ish. So Sir Lamorak, I mean, is undeniably one of, if not the most badass looking minion. Like, he's so cool looking. The red fire armor, the horns, the weapon, the everything. He looks so cool. He is, unfortunately, an Avalon spell and an Avalon minion. And Freddo in Ice tier list didn't do half bad, and that's because it is Ice. And Ice can always use help with DPS. And especially now my Ice has been using Freddo personally, I can say he deserved exactly where he landed. Maybe even a touch higher. Because he's quite good. He gives tower shields, traps, blades. He does it all. The only downside is he's an Ice minion with actual Ice spells for the most part. Unlike Ice Guardian, which just cheats and uses Storm spells. But this is the Fire tier list. So the problem with Sir Lamorak is he is quite good. He can do some good damage. But Fire doesn't have that kind of niche for minions that Ice does with Steel Hit, or Steel Health, or whatever it was, Drain Health, Sacrifice minion. Fire has heals, and as questionable as many of them are, I'd say they're better than trying to summon a minion like Ice does. So, in terms of the use case for minions for Fire, it is essentially an investment. You pay 5 pips up front, you get a body, it'll do damage over time, apply blades to traps. That's all great, and none of it's inherently bad. It's just Fire much rather do a lot of other things with 5 pips. Certainly not Backdraft. I'd rather have Lamorak over a 75 trap. But I don't know. It's just kind of unfortunate. When you get him, it's Avalon, and even at that point in the game, it's kind of hard for him to stay on the field all too long. Because AoEs by enemies become a lot more prominent, and when an enemy uses an AoE, it's actually a good thing if you're solo questing, because they're using extra pips to do less pips worth of damage, which is great. But if you put that minion out there, suddenly they're doing more damage overall. And if Sir Lamorak does end up pulling aggro later, he has less health to work with at that point. And in general, I don't know. Like I said, there are a lot of better use cases for 5 pips. And I think, honestly, I'd rather just build up those pips and use them for something else. I mean, for 5 pips, you could be immediately Scalding, God forbid a Shadow Hit, which, I mean, a singular Shadow Hit will probably do more damage overall than Lamorak will. Because, yeah, minions do have the innate problem of they do not scale. Even my Myth, I've tried so hard to keep the Elephant Dude on my Myth for as long as possible, and eventually she had to give up the Elephant Dude. Can't even remember his name, because he's kind of boring looking. Yeah, he's a good minion, though. And I mean, Lamorak has some powerful spells in his toolkit. He's the definition of D tier, in my opinion. He is not bad whatsoever, but he's also not good. But, yeah, I don't know. It's a sad case, because I like Lamorak, I really do, but my Fire did not use him for very long, because they're minions. They don't inherit your universal resist. They don't inherit your damage. The Avalon minions do have an outgoing damage boost that I think ranges from 20 to 40, maybe? I don't know. I know Freddo has 20, and Freddo hits a wet noodle, but yeah, Lamorak does get carried by Fire spells just being generally good, but still, the minions come with the price of essentially saying you're not going to be using traps fire can actually fuel, which is nice, so even then, but still Lamrack could just use all of your fuel with a single DOT, which they are known to do. I don't know. It's kind of unfortunate. I wanted to put Lamrack higher because I do like it, but thinking of the numbers, thinking about its actual use case, I can't justify it being any higher. I really can't. I mean, I didn't put it where I put it, and the numbers put it where it put it, but still, I don't know. I do have a lot of fond memories of my fire using Lamrack in Avalon, but the second I hit Azteca, not gonna fly. Not gonna fly. You can't spend that time on 5 pips. That was also unnerved Avalon. Not Avalon, Azteca. So, I mean, if my fire wasn't doing the exact moves he needed to and win, he just would lose because he just got out DPS'd. It's unfortunate. I like Lamrack. I'm gonna quit talking in circles and move on. Sorry, Lamrack. You deserve better. So now for 27, we have Scion of Fire. And here's an interesting case, because the Scion for Ice didn't make it too far. And I think in general, most Scions do have the same kind of a ball and chain attached to them. Because, yeah, I mean, 11 pips is such an asking price. Now, if you look just pound for pound at the damage per pip, it's actually kind of underwhelming for fire standards of 1120 damage per pip. It did rank pretty good in damage per pip, actually, because I took the average of the standard damage plus the amplified damage. And the thing is with fire, you can absolutely get the condition. It's not even far from as impossible as it was for Ice. Ice's Scion actually ranked highest just for being like the strongest single target hit that Ice had, full stop. Scion of Fire, I think, technically has that? I don't know, honestly, because quite possibly Serpent might be stronger. S'mores isn't, but S'mores is half the price. But yeah, there are ways to set up Scion of Fire very consistently, in fact, but still, that's 11 pips, which you could be doing a lot with 11 pips. And as I stated here, it's not really even 11 pips, because if you want the conditional, you need 6 traps on the enemy. How are you going to do that? Probably triple trap. So if you fuel plus fuel into a Scion, that's 15 total pips. That's a long time. That's a long, long time, considering you start with 5 pips. At minimum, if everything goes correctly, we're talking, what, 5 turns to do that? Whereas you could have just been, like, blading, trapping. You could have been using those fuels for other things. I don't know. In general, fire doesn't really need the damage that Scion offers, and its utility kind of hurts because of that. What fire really needs is time. They're not as time crunched as Storm is, thankfully, but they do need time. They need time to build up their blades and hit and stuff like that, and the obvious use case for Scion is a boss fight, you know, hit really, really hard. That's great and all, but at the same time, you probably want to get rid of the minion, which usually comes in the form of an AoE. You're probably doing pretty good damage to the boss with the AoE too. You could probably just finish them off with a cheaper solution than Scion of Fire. It's just, I don't know, doesn't really fit well on fire. I do like the conditional in general is much easier and consistent to achieve, especially in comparison to Ice Scion, but I don't know, it's something that fire kind of didn't really need, which tends to kind of be the case for a lot of the Scions, but I don't know. Sadly, this GIF doesn't show the conditional animation of the really cool looking Sunbird, but yeah, I don't know. Which also, we can take a look. Well, we're going to see the next slide, but yeah, so Lamrack was probably like 125 or so. Anywho, Burning Rampage. We got a GIF with like a smooth, buttery 60 FPS. Oh man, it looks great. Man, if you've been a part of PvP for a long time, or at least have just paid attention to it like I have, this spell used to be notorious. This spell was like, if you went first and you had Burning Rampage, you just had the ticket to just win for free. But yeah, the mighty have fallen. The king has been slain, and no one misses you, Burning Rampage. Holy crap. Oh, man. I mean, just the damage alone, it's absolutely jaw-dropping for 5 pips. We're talking 910 damage. That's a ton. You're out-damaging Triton for less pips. That's crazy. It's just very, very annoying to utilize well because it's a bomb, and with the most recent update, they broke up bombs and DOTs into multiple ticks. And that kind of hurt Burning Rampage a lot. Because there used to be the use case of, like, you could ramp into a detonate, and since detonate is free, hey, there you go. You just got your 840 immediately. Or I think it was a little less than that. I think they buffed the damage just a wee bit. And, you know, that actually had kind of a use case. Maybe you, like, ramp, trap, and then, like, or ramp feint and then detonate or something like that. Or you ramp, and as you're waiting for the bomb to go off, you would trap, etc., play defense while you wait for your damage. And AIs, which we're looking at PvE, don't tend to remove bombs pretty much ever, to my knowledge. I don't know, there might be some bosses with, like, spellment spells. Maybe. I don't know. But yeah, that's a real big delay. That's a long time to wait. Myth's Divum spell got the same treatment, and my Myth stopped using it. Because my Myth used it as a big hit, and that's kind of how it worked. It was like a 5-round bomb, I think. And you'd use it, and then after you use it, I would just play defense, I'd put traps on, all of that, and I'd get a huge burst of damage. But it being split over 2 bombs just completely ruins that. Still, the damage is undeniable. You could say it's kind of a set it and forget it spell where, hey, maybe you just straight up start the battle by burning rampaging a minion in a boss fight. More than likely, that minion is probably going to die when that detonate happens. But 5 rounds is a lot of time to have a minion on the field as fire, and it's a lot of time in which that minion could potentially mitigate it. Whether that be just through a simple fortify, which you should be able to pierce through, or a tower shield, maybe even a set shield. I don't know. It's very questionable. Once again, like the definition of a D-tier spell, in my opinion, where it's undeniably not bad, but man, I struggle to call it good either. But yeah, next spell. Now we have Power Link. So if you look at Power Link and Ramp, very, very close together. But man, Power Link was just so close. It was so close. Unlike its younger brother, Power Link actually isn't bad. I mean, that's why it's in D tier. So, Power Link is this interesting modge-podge of utility, and in general, when you combine effects together into a singular spell, that kind of inherently increases the pip cost of the spell, because you're doing more things at once, so that kind of justifies that. Power Link was so close, because per the numbers, it's actually like above the curve of what 4 pips should bring. It does 400 damage for 4 pips, a little bit below Fire's DPP, but it also heals 280, which is about 1 pip's worth of healing. So you put that together, you get about 5 pips of value in a 4 pip package. That's not bad, but honestly, I really wish Power Link just took a direction. I mean, I don't know, a part of me wishes Power Link just got changed to like 5 pips, 6 pips, and they actually leveraged that heal a little bit more. Because, yeah, it essentially is a stronger Fire Elf, but Fire Elf is half the cost, and it has a Sprite in it, which Sprite is great, but Sprite is a singular pip. Yeah, you could Fire Elf and then Sprite, and that's only 3 pips, but slightly less damage, and that does take 2 turns, so I see the niche. But, man, I don't know. It's just like Link, it's too low impact. It's not nearly as bad, because Power Link actually does some damage. It does decent damage. Like I said, a little below Fire's damage per pip, but it does damage, and the healing isn't nothing. You can crit it with Fire Crit. This is a level 55 spell, so you should have crit by that point. If not, you will very soon with Waterworks gear. But you can crit the heal, so maybe it has a little bit more utility than Sprite in that fact. And I do like the potential utility of maybe hitting into a shield, breaking that shield, getting a little bit of cumulative damage, while also getting a little bit of a cumulative healing. The problem is, though, once you get this spell, man, 280 healing, it's too low impact. You could very feasibly have Satyr by that point and just train into that. Arch Mastery with some Satyr. I don't know. I just wanted a little more oomph. It's, once again, the definition of a D-tier spell where I'm kind of struggling with my words, because it's not bad. It really isn't, but it's not good either. It's just, I just wanted more. I honestly would have been okay if they lowered the damage and buffed the healing a bit. If it was like, I don't know, you can keep the terrible initial healing, but make it like 50 plus, is 375 divisible by 3? I don't think so. Yeah, it is, right? Yeah, 15. Yeah, if they made it like 50 plus 375 over 3 rounds, yeah, 125 per round. I could see an argument. Maybe like lower the damage a little bit, make it, maybe make them both the same. Make it 50 plus 375 damage, 50 plus 375 healing. If you really want to commit to the healing being less than the hit, because it's fire, but fire does have a little bit of a healing identity. I'd argue Storm has more of a healing identity now, and that very much was not the way originally, but I don't know. If you look at Storm, you look at like Berry Surprise, which has very admirable healing for the same cost. And Berry went that direction too, where its damage is significantly below the DPP of the school, but the healing is quite good. I could see that with Power Link. Just make it into a utility where it's just a shield breaker that also keeps shields off with that DOT and also heals you over time. You know, if you use it at the wrong time, you wait too long, that heal over time isn't going to work. You know, it very much does play into that modern mentality of heals over time versus burst heals. That could be quite fun. I like that. I like that idea. And we're talking 4 pips here. The standard of 4 pips for healing is Satyr. Satyr is just, what, 860? Straight up, 4 pips? I mean, we're talking Power Link, it could be healing like 500, guys. Wouldn't that be neat? If Fire had like a decent enough heal around that Celestia time? I think that'd be really fun and interesting for PvE and PvP potentially. Probably not, as we'll get into later. Fire has one more heal, and that's not even looked at in PvP, but I think it should be. Hint, hint. But yeah, I don't know. There are so many solutions and hypotheticals with this spell, but ultimately I don't think it's ever going to be touched or buffed, because the Link series kind of was forgotten. Maybe one day we'll get Ultra Link, Superpower Link, maybe, for 6 pips, and it'll actually give some pretty good healing and some decent damage or something. I don't know, that'd be cool, but yeah. And I'm pretty sure we're rounding out the D tier here with Immolate. Now, Immolate, this being this low might be a hot take, because Immolate is such a cool concept and has unparalleled damage for its cost. 4 pips to deal 600 damage is a truck ton. We are talking above Kraken's maximum damage, and that's a Storm spell. And yeah, Storm and Fire are both the 2 strongest DPP schools, but the difference between Fire and Storm is quite significant. So not only do you match Storm, but you outrange Storm, and their damage is crazy. And Immolate is a spell I've mentioned in prior in regards to Phoenix. I am of 2 minds. So this spell did get buffed. It used to do 250 to deal 600, which is really fun. And now it's 200 to deal 600, and that is undisputedly better. I mean, it was a buff. It was straight up a buff. And it's a really cool concept, but at the same time, that damage looks low, but it is far from insignificant. You have to keep in mind, 200 is just 1/3 of 600. So whatever damage you're doing 1/3 of that to yourself. But you have to keep in mind, of course, resist and stuff like that. Your enemy probably doesn't have resist to fire unless they are fire, in which case you probably prismed or maybe shriked. God forbid you use Immolate and Shrike. Because that's the thing. that take 200 damage scales with you and your stats. So if you're in Shrike and you do this, you're piercing all of your resist. It's hilarious. It does a truck ton of damage. But my fire is level 150 currently. And man, I don't know. I have the Spellamented Immolate, which I'm pretty sure still does just 200 to you. And I'm like very consistently doing over 1k to myself. It's kind of tough to justify running Immolate because I have it, because I have the Spellments for it, and I think it's a fun trap counter. But at the same time, it's kind of tough. It's kind of tough because yeah, the 200 damage scales with my damage, which is like 165 or something, kind of low for 150. But hey, I'll farm 170 stuff once I get there. But fire is the pierce school too, so my pierce like almost outweighs my resist. So I'm hitting myself for a lot. If I crit, I'm critting myself too. I'm pretty sure you can crit block on yourself though, which is nice. But yeah, it's not insignificant damage. And when you're talking about HP pools of, you know, 6k to 8k, taking 1000 damage of your own health isn't insignificant, especially with the kind of threats that enemies pose late game and their DPS. It's important to keep a health pool, and Immolate kind of hurts that, but Immolate also has an interesting potential with a combo of Fire Shield yourself, which is a minus 80 shield, into Immolate. And I think especially early game, once you get Immolate and Croc, that's actually a fantastic and very slept-on combo. Because, yeah, even Heckhound for 4 pips... Wait, actually... Wait, yeah. Even for 4 pips, Heckhound doesn't have the same kind of damage as Immolate. So, maybe... I mean, you start with your... Well, we'll say you have the Hasa. You start with your 3 or 4 pips. I mean, if you want to, instead of blading into a Heckhound, which... Hey, that will do more damage, and it won't hurt you. You could shield into Immolate, which will do a lot of damage still, and it's immediate. And Immolate really has that niche of just, like, immediate punch that Fire kind of desperately wants for a long time. You do get Phoenix, but Phoenix doesn't hit as hard as Immolate, and I don't know, the inner part of me wants to hit as hard as possible. Helephant exists, and Helephant does hit harder and doesn't hurt yourself. But Helephant, we're talking 2 extra pips for not as much more damage as you'd like, honestly. Because I think Helephant is like 645 to 725 or so. And, I mean, that is good, but I don't know. Is that worth 2 pips? Maybe, maybe not, but I don't know. Yeah, I think the cost is a little harmful, a little too much. I don't want to say too much because honestly, I think it's right where it should be. It's such a fun and incredibly cool concept for a spell. Like, how many other schools have a spell that hurts themselves to do something that aren't death? I mean, death, you have like Empower, Sacrifice, Juju, etc., etc. What other schools do that? I mean, like Storm kinda with Insane Bolt. I kind of miss old Insane Bolt. That's a topic for another day. I don't know. I don't think there are any other schools, right? Maybe they're just not coming to mind. There's the Catnap card, which like kind of has like an Immolate effect, sort of, but that's a pet card. I don't know. It's just... It kind of hurt putting Immolate where it is because I wanted to put it higher, but when we're talking about this sort of damage to yourself, it's far from insignificant. I'm pretty sure damage enchants, thankfully, don't apply to the 200. If so, awful. I'm pretty sure they don't. It's kind of hard to tell, especially with the Spellmented version that just, like, has too much text on it, and it just, like, at the end, and, like, I can't even see how much damage I'm supposed to do. But, yeah, I don't know. Immolate's really fun. It's really interesting. And you see it used a lot in PvP as just like a big hit for Fire. It's a big finisher. Its damage is unparalleled. But at the same time, fires in PvP have to be careful with it, because yeah, they can sometimes cause draws by double downing if both wizards are too low. Because yeah, Immolate, it doesn't hit you too hard, but it hits you, and it hits you more than you'd probably like. Because you think about Death or something like that with their Empower that does 250, I want to say, or their Sacrifice that does 250, their Juju that does 250 or 300 or whatever. Those are not significant amounts of damage usually, but that's because you're Death, and it's very easy to heal it off, whether that be through Sacrifice, which you immediately heal yourself back and then some, or if that's a drain. Fire doesn't really have that. Death has the health and the resist to hit itself. Death's Pierce isn't nearly as good as Fire's. Fire is the Pierce school, so their resist will outweigh their Pierce and then some. I don't know. It's hard to justify. I am very sad that it only made it so far, but hey, considering there are 42 spells on the list, Immolate could have done a whole lot worse. And now we got King Artorias, the fire version. I mean, make your jokes, point your fingers, haha, useless stun. This spell is where it is just because fire lacks a strong single target burst hit for a long part of the game. You could be using Elephant for a good while if you'd like to. But yeah, if you just want raw, unfiltered single target damage, King Artorias is your best choice for kinda until Azteca, maybe? Actually, no, yeah, I think it's better than even that spell in regards to single target, single hit, just burst hit. But, you know, 8 pip single target hit does about 800 damage, very comparable to Ifrit. It does more damage than Ifrit, so if you're just trying to one-shot something, it's better than Ifrit in that regard. But it has a much, much weaker utility. Stun, useless. We've been over this. Not even useful in PvP anymore, because like I said, I was recording June 27th. It is now the 28th, because, I mean, yeah, I gotta take breaks, guys. Voice only goes so far. But, they're banned in PvP now. No stuns. Ha 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 ha. The Spell Mint version will keep it relevant in PvP, though, so it's okay. But, yeah, it's saddening to see. Because, yeah, the stun doesn't do anything. In my fire, I remember getting King Artorias, using it once because the animation is so sick looking. I love the animations of Artorias spells. I mean, look at that. That's so cool looking. And then pretty much just, like, taking it out of my deck. Because, I mean, hey, it's great. That's also before Ifrit got nerfs. And, I mean, back then, whew, that was a spell. Yeah, it's a D tier spell. I've said this, like, 8 times now in this tier. You know, it's not bad, but it's also not good. It has its niche, it has its utility. It's, you know, a spell that doesn't have its damage divided. It doesn't have a hit and then a DOT, which many fire spells have. So it does have that niche. It's a good hard hitter. But we're talking, this is before you enter Chrysalis? Yeah. Which, I mean, hey, if there's any time in the game that you want strong single target hits, it's gonna be Chrysalis, but yeah, I don't know. It's a little sad. There is a stronger hitting fire spell that you get before this spell, but that spell actually divides its damage. For enchant purposes, King Artorias is actually better. In general, that spell will do more damage, but also at a cost. But yeah, you know, King Artorias, I'm pretty proud of where it landed. I think the Ice King Artorias is actually better, and that was quite surprising, because most King Artorias spells in general are kind of just like, eh. Fires is alright. It's fine. They're probably better and probably worse ones. Well, there definitely are better ones. The Ice one is better. But yeah, continuing. And I'm pretty sure we are rounding out the D tier with Naphtha Scarab. Maybe Naphtha. I always pronounce it Oh, typo, uh-oh. But yeah, Nap the Scarab is situationally better fuel. Because just like fuel, it's 2 pips, but Nap the Scarab obviously is a Scarab. It runs up, it hits them, does some chip damage, and it applies a triple trap, but only usable with damage over times. So, I mean, let's say hypothetically you scalded on the prior turn, then this is just straight up better fuel. Actually, no, it's not even then. Let's say you Nap the Scarab and then you scald, then it's better fuel because you got a little bit of chip damage. Maybe you got rid of a shield, maybe you got rid of a weakness, and now that scald's going to do more damage. If you just fueled, that scald would still get that same damage buff, but the scald would have been hitting into a shield the first round, it would have been weaknessed. You know, I mean, it's kind of hard to find things to say about Nap the Scarab because it's like the definition of situationally useful, but I think fuel in general is a pretty fantastic and great all-around spell. Nap the Scarab has the same kind of potential with a little extra thrown on. I mean, you know, it's neat. It's nice. It's nice little bit of damage. You could even argue of using it instead of Firecat if you want a cheap single target hit to enchant, because it does more than Firecat, and 1 pip, 2 pip are pretty much synonymous, but it's alright. It's not bad. I will mention it actually is kind of good for Scion quite often, because Scion, the problem with traps is every time you hit something, you use that trap. Scion, these traps are very unlikely to be used unless you intend to use them. So unless you purposely do a damage over time, those traps aren't going anywhere, which is great. My fire has the Fire Beetle pet, and that one is essentially an Nap the Scarab, but it puts a fuel on them. I think a 35 fuel too. But those are fuels, so further fire spells, whatever they may be, will consume them. So you could Nap the Scarab into a Scion, which, I mean, hey, that's groovy, but like, cool. We could have just used fuel instead, and that's more generally applicable. Or, you know, elemental trap, anything. I don't know. The Scion's not that great. But yeah, you know, Nap the Scarab, I'm delightfully surprised with it. Because, yeah, in that update where all the schools got like a few spells sprinkled into their Arc 1 train list, because we needed more of those. Which I say that we didn't need more of them, but I was happy to get them nonetheless. I don't think anybody asked for them, honestly, but, you know, it was a delightful surprise. You know, this was one of the more interesting and better ones. I mean, look at this spell and then look at Thieving Dragon. Don't they do, like, the exact same damage? Yeah, don't they do the same damage? Hey, that's an ice spell. It's not fair. It's not a fair comparison. And then, like, Life got, like, Brûlé Sucre and all that fun stuff, but, yeah. Is that when Balance got Gearhead? No, I think it's when they got Iron Curse, which, that's a spell. Anywho, Sidetrack. Good enough spell. Not good, not great, but not bad. A good encapsulation of the D tier. Alright, we are getting to good spells. We are at the C tier. I'm excited. Except I'm kind of not, because this tier is mostly just bad AoEs. Ice had like a small handful of AoEs, and they were all fantastic. Especially for Ice's standards of damage. Fire, I mean, if you know, you know, I suppose, but yeah, Ice had one AoE in C tier, and it really should have been in B tier. Empirically speaking, where the numbers lied, it made more sense to group Snow Angel at the bottom of B tier. I just kind of gave into the hate. I had a little bit of self-doubt. It was kind of a hot take as is, but honestly, I should have just full sent. I should have put it in B tier, especially now that I've been using Snow Angel on my Ice. It is a great spell. It really is. I don't care what the haters say. But yeah, Fire has incredibly steep competition when it comes to AoEs for obvious and non-obvious reasons. But AoEs with that damage buff, it is hard to deny that they are good spells. This isn't an opinionated tier list. This is as logistical and as like practical based as possible, and due to that, this is where the AoEs ended up. even if I would have put them in like F tier, as in never used them tier. But yeah. Anywho, we got Titania / Macbeth theme from Star Fox 64 in the background. This is the 3D remake rendition. I mean, that train level, whew, yeah, it's good shit. Does it have anything to do with fire? Not really, but I mean, it's a fire track. Anywho. So we are kicking off the C tier with Elephant. Elephant got mentioned a lot in passing in D tier. Here it is. I mean, you know, if we were to look at the number grouping, it broke the 140 threshold, and that's kind of where I put that benchmark. But yeah, this is just tried and true 6-pick straight damage hit. And I mean, Elephant is fantastic in that regards. It's one of the best 6-pip hits. I mean, we're looking at just fire. In general, great damage, all in a nice, neat package. Once you take the average, it actually is just like a wee bit below the damage per pip, I think. But the sad thing with Elephant is its timing, unfortunately. You get it at 42, that's when you get all your 6-pip hits, and I mean, once you get it, it has a legitimate argument, both for and against Immolate. It does a little bit more than Immolate, but it costs more, it has no self-harm. So, you know, there is a lot of, you know, competition there in argumentation possible. But the point is, if you want that damage, the potential already exists before Elephant. And there's a certain little unknown spell that comes at level 48 that just, like, even though it's not a single target hit, kinda almost invalidates Elephant. And if you really want a single target hit, you do get a free at 58, which has its own argument. This one's conflicting, because yeah, Elephant is a good spell. It is. That's why it's in C tier. It's a good spell, in my opinion. It just, yeah, it is kind of hard to find its use, its niche, its utility. 6-pip spells in general kind of fall off as the game progresses. I think I actually overrated Colossus a little bit on Ice as I've progressed on my Ice. I have a max tier Spellmint Colossus, so it never fizzles, always does the same damage, hits pretty hard. And even then, quite often, I'll find myself waiting for Mammoth pips. Or I'll just Frostbite, which, hey, Frostbite earned its spot. But yeah, Elephant kind of has that problem too. It does thankfully have that nice secured spot as a single target hit for a great cost, pretty good damage per pip. It's just tried and true. Elephant is tried and true. It gets the job done. It's a good spell. It's just kind of sadly eclipsed. Whereas a lot of spells over the years got buffed and nerfed, Elephant was never changed. Sans Spellmints, of course. And I would say the Spellmint path with Elephant is actually quite fun. And in general, Fire Spellmint paths are kind of eh. Elephant's is fun. It has some fun interaction with some cheating bosses. Unfortunately, that Spellmint path does also lower its damage to like 4 to 5 pip range, so eh. Or you could always just say, screw it, take the damage path or Elephant, which, I mean, if you do that, you're based. But, yeah. It's your best single target hit for like 10-ish levels. It's even then kind of arguable. It is just kind of unfortunate. It deserves its spot in C tier. It absolutely does, because it is a good spell. It's just kind of wrong place, wrong time. If Immolate didn't exist, Elephant would be a whole lot better. I think Elephant is better than Immolate overall. But yeah, there is that argument, and when it came to Colossus for Ice, there wasn't really an argument versus Colossus or Wyvern. Because, I mean, Wyvern does Wyvern damage, Colossus does Colossus damage. Immolate does almost Elephant damage. Elephant does better than Immolate, but not by enough. There is that dialogue, that questionability. But yeah, I mean, Elephant is good. Not much more to say. I'll refrain from talking in circles. Moving on. We are at number 20, one of my favorite numbers, and we have Rain of Fire. one of my least favorite spells. Look at this crap, 149.95. You know how it got here? Damage per pip. Woo, woo, woo. Yeah, that's just any credibility I had out the window. Did you know this spell got nerfed? Isn't that funny? I mean, you're probably looking at it and you're like, oh, 130 and then 810 over 3 rounds. That's not that bad. Oh, man, it's awful in comparison to a spell you get before it. Like, Rain of Fire has actually almost no use. I would argue it has no use. It does have, like, niche use of, like, oh, Shield Breaker and then significant damage over time, but, like, man. Like I said, this spell got nerfed. It used to have a place in terms of its damage it did. Not anymore. Not anymore. It's niche. Its only selling point is that damage over time. And in general, it's your damage and you want it now, so it's kind of... I don't know. There's a certain spell you get like 20 levels prior to this one that's just better in every way except for the damage over time. So, I don't know. This is quite possibly the worst AoE of all time. Snow Angel, even relative to the tiers, made it higher. And I think well-deservingly. You couldn't even make the analogous comparison to Snow Angel, but that's like the whole point of like we're looking within the schools themselves, and Rain of Fire in the School of Fire is garbage. It's awful. It sucks. Where Snow Angel in the School of Ice was actually not bad. It was quite good. But yeah, I don't know. Prior to the nerf, there was like maybe a use case, because I think it did like 300 plus like 900 or something like that. I think it broke 1,000 damage. Like, it hit pretty hard, you know. But, man, this spell just has no relevance. This right here should be like an honorary F tier. It's here because, yeah, pragmatically speaking, it's not that bad. It does a lot of damage. It hits hard. But, I mean, we're talking just dead on arrival. No use. Bad. Awful. 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 Bad. I mean, my fire had it before it was nerfed, and even back then, before another certain spell from 20 levels prior to this one got buffed, I kind of struggled to use this spell because it's a 9-pip cost, and I don't know. Sometimes getting to that 9-pip threshold is kind of annoying on fire, so yeah. Back then, though, its damage was unparalleled, so yeah. Not anymore. Moving on. Okay, now we have a much more fun, interesting spell. We have Inferno Salamander. So, 6-pip single target hit. You know, analogous to Elephant in that regards, but instead of doing immediate damage, you're doing deferred damage. You're doing damage over time. 10 ticks total, in fact. So each of those ticks is hitting for 95 base. So you're not going to be using traps effectively. You might use a damage over time trap somewhat effectively, but even then that's questionable. You're not going to use fuel. You're not going to use feint. Even a 0-pip trap, arguably it's better to just pass and save that for later. But it's an interesting trade-offer. If you're just blading up, then this does more damage than Elephant. And it has perfect consistency, which is really, really nice. Elephant's damage consistency actually isn't that bad, but there is quite a bit of a difference between its minimum and its maximum. But honestly, the two could have been swapped around. I think in terms of points, yeah, they're within 10 points, so rather close. I think it kind of comes down to preference. For me, the list was made with, you know, pure numbers and such, so for the most part, so that's why it did outrank slightly, because its damage per pip is absurd. We're talking better than Triton damage. I mean, that's great. But yeah, there is no utilizing traps effectively, and your damage takes a good while to actually rack up. Whereas Elephant, it's immediate, punches hard. Not nearly as hard as Salamander, actually. We're talking like 2/3 the power, but it is immediate. And I mean, hey, if you hit a Elephant into a feint, that's hitting harder than a Salamander. Because Salamander just can't use feint. So, I mean, the two ended up rather close. Honestly, you could take your pick. You could pretend Rain of Fire is an F tier. You know, I'd be all the happier with all of the above, but numbers don't lie. this is C tier incarnate. But yeah, Inferno Salamander, it's alright. You just kind of have to use it with a different approach to Elephant. If you're using Elephant, you're probably putting a Feint, Blade stacking. Inferno Salamander, you're committing to, I am not going to use Feint. In which case, your reward is more damage. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to make an argument for Detonate, but it's split over 2 different damage over time, so even then you're only detonating a 425 hit. Not 425, 475 hit. So then it's like, I mean, you could. Why would you, though? May as well just keep the ticks and let them do their thing over time. Shield breaking utility. Anywho, I like Salamander. I always like the Mander standard natural attack. Show me your ha! And then it makes like a weird scream sound effect, stock scream. It's so weird. Always loved it, so I like that Fire got it as an actual spell. Does my Fire ever use it? No. No. But, yeah. That's because it came a little too late for my Fire. My Fire was already like level 125, 130-ish when this spell was introduced. Yeah. Not a bad spell, though. Good. Good spell. Okay, and at 18, very close to Salamander. Oh yeah, in fact, it tied with Salamander, but I gave it the upper hand because immediate damage. But without a Shadow Pip, this is as good as fire damage gets. Asterisk. Because you have a very powerful big hit, and then this weird mechanic where you do a second hit to everybody. And on paper, if you ignore damage enchants, you're like, oh damn, this is like not bad. That's like a solid 8 pips worth of damage for fire standards, plus like a meteor. That's like 12 total pips of value. Like, that's not bad. That's really good, in fact. But yeah, it's kind of questionable because of damage enchants. If you want to hit something really hard with a burst hit, you would think Sun Serpent as that 10 pip hit, really big capital letter at the beginning of a sentence kind of sort of thing. But the damage is split. If you put an epic on it, you're only getting 150 on the initial, and then you're getting 150 on the second hit. I mean, if you're some sort of maniac that chooses to feint twice, then there you go, but you could have just feinted and then potent trap feinted, and that would have been much better. So once you factor in the splitting of the damage enchants, a damage enchanted Ifrit, and especially King Artorias, will hit harder initially than Sun Serpent. Sun Serpent does more damage overall, undeniably, because it does have that second hit, which is nice, but it's just kind of weird. And since the second hit only takes half the enchant too, you kind of can't just like hit a boss and then expect the minion to die. That doesn't work for a number of reasons, because, I mean, it's a 10 pip hit. You could have used a certain 7 pip spell to clear that minion and hit the boss. So, yeah, I don't know. Sun Serpent's weird. Because, yeah, I mean, pound for pound, its damage is very, very great. It's fantastic, in fact. But I don't know, to some extent, you kind of want a little more oomph from a 10 pip spell. I can't remember if this was one of the spells that got nerfed. I think it was. I think all the 10 pip spells got nerfed. I'd have to double check that. In fact, I can double check that to the side. Because, yeah, I'm pretty sure once upon a time it hit harder. Maybe? Did it get buffed? No, yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah, it used to do 900 to 1,000, and then 300 to everybody. And that, honestly, I think was kind of right on the money. Because even with damage enchants being split, I think it either did this, like, about the same, or just did a little bit more. I don't know. That's interesting. Because if you had an epic enchant that was 300, 150 would go to that, so it would do 1050 minimum. Whereas Ifrit, I can't remember how much that did back over there back then. No, Ifrit would still hit harder on the initial hit. But yeah, apparently there was a point, maybe it was just test realm changes, where Sun Serpent did 615 to 715, and then 245 to all. Thankfully, that's not the universe we live in. Sun Serpent, as it is a fine enough spell. You know, it's a good hit. You know, it may quite fire up the list. C tier, it definitely earned its placement here. But yeah, I don't know. Honestly, I think it's one of the spells that maybe could have gotten away without being nerfed. Pretty sure the damage path is now banned in PvP too, so it wouldn't even be a problem there. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of weird. It was a really fun concept of a big hit plus an AoE combined into one, but AoE's already hit both enemies, so I kind of rather just hit both enemies. Much better than Avenging Fossil. Don't get me wrong there. Whew. Ooh, that's a spell. If and when we get to that death tier list one day, but yeah, I don't know. I think overall Lord of Winter kind of has more of a niche for ice, because yeah, it is put in one like nice convenient package. But Sun Serpent is far from bad. I like Sun Serpent. I do. I just kind of struggle to use it, because 10 pips is a lot. As you get later in the game, there are better options for cheaper. It's a little unfortunate. It's kind of like a Elephant case, where, like, you know, this is the fire list. I'm more familiar with fire. I'm much more harsh with fire overall. Yeah. It's another, like, outclass spell, but it is good. It is a good spell. It just, yeah. Do you run these late game? Probably not. Which isn't that crazy that Azteca is in late game anymore. Whew, imagine. Crazy. That's mid-game. Then again, once you're over the Arc 2 hump, Arc 3 and 4 are much faster. But still. Yeah. Sun Serpent, it has its role. It has its undeniable power. But the high cost, the splitting of damage keeps it where it is. Otherwise, yeah, it probably would be higher. Not all 10-pip spells are mediocre, guys, I promise. It's just Ice's is fine, and Fire's is good. Better than Avenging Fossil. Next, we have Blast Off. Some of these newer spells, which is like to say Arc 4, don't have gifts, but who cares? Blast Off. I mean, like, Rain of Fire Part 2 over here. It is marginally better than Rain of Fire, and it's a shadow hit. A 6-pip shadow hit, and that alone just speaks volumes. So, in case the hieroglyphs make no sense, which, hey, I don't blame you for, you have a 955 bomb on everybody. That takes 4 rounds. And if they currently have a damage over time, you extend it by 1 round. Which, like, isn't that great. The utility just kind of, like, boggles the mind of, like, I mean, I guess so. I almost would prefer if they just, like, detonated and then put a bomb on, so maybe you could blast off into blast off, and that'd be, like, a really funny, stupid combo if you build up, like, 2 shadow pips. But I don't know. The utility is just so weird and not good. And I mean, like, hey, 6-pip AoE, that's shadow? That rings a bell. I think that already existed for Fire and wasn't delayed. The damage is undeniable. The damage is fantastic. We're talking about almost, yeah, marginally stronger than Rain of Fire, which was a 9-pip hit. This is 6 pips and a shadow, and I mean, hey, by the time you're ready to hit, you probably got 1 shadow pip. Probably. But also keep in mind, this is a Lemuria spell. We're talking, like, level 140 to 150 range. At that point, you have so many better options. I don't know. It's just so weird. I mean, I guess you could even leverage the bombs as fire and, like, keep shields off enemies or build up traps. And, I mean, at least the bomb isn't split into 2, so it has its use cases. I don't know, man. I've never been a fan of this spell. It's just weird. The Lemuria spells in general are quite weird, but there's some pretty good ones. Ice had a fantastic one. So, I don't know, Blast Off, I mean, I'd probably say it's better than Endgame, because Endgame is just weird and has this split damage mechanic. Blast Off is in one neat package. That is nice. You know, maybe you're trying to give Detonate a reason to exist. And honestly, I could see it. I could see it for this spell, because, hey, it hits really hard, and it's in one neat package. That's important. But, yeah, I don't know. Just kind of questionable. And like I said, the utility just, like, may as well not be there. The amount of times you're going to utilize it in any capacity is very low. The amount of times you're going to use it and it's actually going to do anything significant is non-existent. I mean, unless you... No, you can't even extend a Heck Hound, because a Heck Hound's an X spell, so you'll be out of pips. So unless you have a balanced donating power, or you empower and extend on the last round, which then you have to be first. I don't know, like, what are you supposed to be extending? Rain of Fire? yeah, Rain of Fire and a Blast Off combo, OP. Yeah, that's crazy. A damage is damage. That's how Blast Off got here. I think Blast Off honestly does earn this tier placement. I could maybe even see it being a little bit higher if I was a little less harsh. But I don't know, if a spell is demanding or justifying the existence of Detonate, that's kind of a problem in its own right. There's a spell Fire has that doesn't require a Shadow Pip that does more damage, and it still does it to all enemies. We'll get to that later. That you've had for like literally 100 levels before this one. Haha, spoilers. Okay, so now we are at 16. We are at Fuel. Fuel's been mentioned quite a few times. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's just 3 traps for the price of 2 pips. They are all the same traps. They do not stack. If they did, that would be absurd. That'd be crazy. But that'd be like a super feint. That would totally be worth 2 pips. That'd be worth like 3 pips, honestly. But, you know, there's plenty of uses in Fire's toolkits for having multiple traps at once. But in general, like, a blade is free and applies to all ticks of a DOT, and that's kind of the idea of Fuel, is it's so that you can hit, and if you have a damage over time, it can benefit several times. So that's the problem with traps, is they only apply to 1 hit. But, you know, now we're kind of talking the paradigm of traps versus blades, and in general, blades are better. But hey, Fuel is a trap that can actually stack with your standard trap along with your blade if you want to, like, fuel a boss, and then, like, AoE, you hit that boss for a little extra damage, and then once it comes time to hit again after you blade and stuff, you have another trap to use. Traps are free, so that is important to note that a standard trap would be 0 pips. But honestly, the price of 2 pips for a solid 3 total traps, I think more than justifies it. In general, that's like kind of analogous to using a Spirit or Elemental Blade, except not as good. But, you know, feels great. Feels good. Well, I wouldn't call it great, which, yeah, I'm gonna say, it tied with Blast Off. Obviously, Fuel got the edge on this one for a spell I actually use. Yeah. But yeah, Fuel's fine. Fuel is good. It's kind of one of those things where, like, you kind of have to build your deck around it, and you kind of have to play around it as well. Otherwise, it's just another trap to stack. And for 2 pips, that's honestly not the worst thing ever on its own. Elemental Trap is 1 pip, so that's cheaper, but 1 and 2 pips may as well be the same thing. So, I mean, like, yeah, if you really need another trap, Fuel's not a bad idea. And, you know, maybe if you hit really hard with a spell that has, like, multiple hits, like Sun Serpent, hey, Fuel's your best friend, that's great. Blade would still be better. But hey, Fuel is good. Happy to see it landed at number 16. We are to the B tier, and this is unfortunately a very short and sweet tier. There isn't too many spells. There aren't too many spells in this tier. Just a few that I couldn't really group in A tier just due to the placings and the numbers. Still, these are quite good spells. You know, I probably run a copy or 2, even at higher levels. In the background for this small tier, we have the Trial of Radiance from Fire Emblem Engage. Great game. General soundtrack wasn't really as amazing as prior entries, but still pretty good. Pretty good. Not like a Dragon Quest XI sort of situation where, like, soundtrack's kind of like, a little bit of a letdown. But yeah. Ooh, I might get some flack for that. Anywho, B tier spells. Good spells. We are finally to, like, the good spells, unarguably. C tier, they're good. B tier, they're good. So we got Fire Elf to kick out the B tier, and I mean, like, just look at this damage per pip. 310 damage for 2 pips is absurd. Like, did this spell really need to be buffed? I thought 50 plus 210 was perfectly fine. It, like, did a ton of damage. Even compared to Storm, it was like a mid-level Lightning Bats, and I think that's what Fire should be with the damage over time. It's, like, comparable to Storm. But no, they buffed it, and it just, like, eclipses Sunbird now. I mean, this is why Sunbird is trapped in E tier, where it will forever stay because you get Fire Elf before Sunbird, and I think, as I mentioned there, Fire gets their Fire Blade early, so you can just Blade into Fire Elf, and that'll kill just about anything in Wizard City. Because, yeah, a Bladed Fire Elf hits hard. We're talking over 400 damage, which, I mean, 395 is the big threshold in Wizard City. I mean, we're talking about one less pip for pretty much the same damage as Sunbird. It is just kind of crazy. The Fire Elf is it's just crazy. The reason why it isn't any higher is because it kind of does fail in the normal utility of 2 pip hits, which is to say, like, later on you can enchant them for a cheap, immediate source of damage. Fire Elf, the damage is split between the initial and the overtime, so it kind of falters in that regard. But, I mean, like, damn. You just can't deny this damage. This damage is unparalleled. Alright, we're talking 5 out of the 7 schools, 3 pip hits will always do less damage. Yeah, I get it, it's a damage over time, those are kind of annoying, but they have their own niches, and when you get Fire Elf, you're not really concerned with trapping. Fire doesn't get their trap till 16. You're not going to get Feint till 22, because I think they changed it to 22. It used to be 26. Same difference. I mean, once you get there, you have another spell you rather use. But, I mean, when you get Fire Elf, it is just so absurd. I don't think any spell in this game, with the exception of maybe Tempest, even compares to, like, how relevant the spell is the second you get it. The second you get Fire Elf, holy crap. You just spam it, everything dies, it's great. You might fizzle it every now and again because fire. But I mean, that's like Storm with Tempest. The second you get Tempest, it's just immaculate. It's crazy. Fire Elf is crazy too. We're putting the power of what should be a level 10 wizard in the hands of a level 5 wizard. Nothing wants to take a Fire Elf, sans the Harvest Lord, because he is fire. In which case, I mean, have fun with that. But, you know, Fire Elf is not Fire Elf. Harvest Lord's nerfed anyways by the outgoing damage nerf for whatever reason. I don't know. They wanted to make Triton Avenue baby gamer mode. But, I mean, it's Fire Elf. I have already talked in length about Fire Elf in several other slides, because, I mean, this is just like the gold standard of, like, this is the power of fire. Do you compare to Fire Elf? Is there a reason for Fire Elf to be used over you? If so, you might get docked, so on and so forth. Later on, once you get the enchants, I would argue it is still a pretty good cheap hit, but with an epic, at most you're hitting for initially is 250, which is pretty low as immediate hit, but you do have the damage over time, which, you know, once you add that all up, it is still very, very strong. But, yeah, Fire Elf, not half bad. Spellmint Path, it's okay. Top Path, I think, is just straight up useless. I think it just puts more damage on the initial and takes it off the overtime. It doesn't change it at all. I don't know. Whack. Anywho, moving on. So now we have Glimpse of Infinity, which this one I kind of wish we did have the gift, because it has a really cool animation. But I mean, it's just Inferno Salamander, except like 20 damage weaker and 1 pip cheaper. Which, I mean, there's not really much else I can say. This spell is known for its Spellmint Path that gets rid of shields for traps, and then, you know, it has the damage over time, of course. But arguably, the Spellmint Path is just better on every school except Fire, because Fire will just immediately burn those traps. But I'm not considering Spellmints anyways. And I mean, just in a vacuum on its own, Glimpse of Infinity, hey, it's not bad. It's pretty good. Great damage per pip. Would have loved to have the GIF. But, you know, beggars will always be choosers in the Wizard101 community, so come on, do better, Wizard101 Central, come on. I ain't paying you nothing for nothing. Come on. But I mean, it's Glimpse of Infinity. There's not much else to say, because it's just Inferno Salamander. 1 less pip the calories. All the same great damage you know and love. And some aspartame. And rounding out this short B tier, we have Heckhound. I mean, should this spell have been this high? Maybe, maybe not. Call me biased. It's because I am. I love Heckhound. The point of time when you get this spell and the damage it provides is how it gets here. Is it like Fire Elf tier of like the second you get this, it just destroys the game for that point? No, not at all. But Heckhound, when you get it, which is level 18, I mean, it just has amazing damage, and the thresholds of 130 per pip is actually surprisingly good. With 2% damage, which, I mean, you'll have 2% damage, surely. Or 5 flat damage, I suppose. You hit the 395 threshold, which is great for Croc. Enemies, I don't think, hit 500 HP. If they do, they're ice enemies, which you boost on. But yeah, I mean, like, it's just a fantastic spell. Unfortunately, it does get kind of eclipsed by another spell that's just kind of overall more efficient. But, I mean, we're just talking pure power. Heckhound does not leave me wanting whatsoever. It's so strong. Like I said here, even with 0% damage, a fire wizard with 750 pip will do 750 damage with 5 pips. I mean, even compared to Immolate, that's crazy. Unless I did that math wrong. I totally did. Wow. Wow, I messed up that math. 650. There we go. Which, even that's great. Maybe that was just a typo then. But yeah, I would say 650, great. Great damage for 5 pips. I mean, you're paying 1 more pip than Immolate, but you're getting more damage than Immolate. You're not hurting yourself. You have the utility of damage over time, which is actually quite useful at that point in the game. Because, you know, Crocotopia, me personally, I'm usually level 18 around, like, the Crocosphinx. And, hey, bunch of ice enemies there, and they will use those 80% fire shields. So, hey, Heckhound's great in that. So, it is unfortunate it's a dot. I mean, if this spell was just 130 per pip, Judgment style, it'd be absurdly broken. Like, so broken. It would invalidate every spell fire has and gets that just does straight damage. But as it stands, I mean, it is an X spell, so it does have the unfortunate quirk of always using all the pips you have. If you could maybe choose how many pips you use, that might help it. You know, Heckhound has, like, the most obvious use with Detonate, but even then, you're guaranteed to have 1 tick of the 3-tick spell go off, so you're just essentially accelerating it by 1 tick, which even then, Detonate's not great. So, I mean, hey, that's not Heckhound's fault. That's just Detonate being bad. But, I mean, yeah. Heckhound, good spell. Great spell, even. Strong damage. Cool animation. I mean, in terms of animations that haven't been updated, Heckhound might have one of the best. Looks so good. It looks so good. But yeah. I mean, I love Heckhound. You take any of the prior single target damage hits from before and compare them to Heckhound at that appropriate pip value, they will always get beaten out. Doing the math correctly, 780 for 6 pips destroys Elephant. Immolate's like the only one that wins out, but Immolate also hurts you, which Heckhound doesn't. But yes, it does have the DOT, so with this massive power, you're not going to be able to synergize it with Feint, but works great with Blades, works great with Fuel. There's kind of not too much more to say. I mean, I love Heckhound. I love Heckhound. It's one of my favorites. My Fire still runs a copy of it, even at his level. Arguably, he shouldn't. But, yeah. I mean, it's Heckhound. I love Heckhound. Finally, to the A tier. I mean, sadly, we weren't in the B tier too long. We won't be in the A tier too long, either. There are only 4 spells here, if I remember correctly. But the spells from here just get so much better. We are finally at, like, the great spells of Fire. We are listening to a nice calm jam in the background, because we won't be here too long. Once we get to the S tier, we'll pump up the energy a lot. But this is from Bravely Second, End Layer. Are you ready? A nice chill jam from my favorite Bravely Default game. So yeah, do your Dancing Dragon, and it's time to learn the true nature of Fire. So for number 12, we're kicking things off with a fantastic spell and a terrible Gif. I forgot how bad it is. We have Ifrit. You know, let's just, like, take all the bad memories of it being used against us and put them in a box for a little bit. Because we're talking about using the spell, not being used against us. Because this is probably one of the most hated spells in Wizard101 history. Some people would probably rather just be stunned than be Ifrited. It's been nerfed. It's been nerfed a lot. And even still, minus 45% weakness hurts. But if you're the one using the Ifrit, hey, that's kind of nice. Because you got an 8-pip hit that does less than Fire's DPP, but it's in one nice bundle and it has perfect consistency. which is really, really nice. So, you know, the biggest contemporary would be Elephant. Elephant does a little bit less damage, but is a whole 2 pips less. However, this spell has perfect consistency, so it gets points from that. And the utility on this spell is fantastic. If you don't kill your enemy, you are severely crippling their next hit. Minus 45 weakness is a lot. Especially once you get further in the game, enemies have pierce. Weaknesses are better than shields, because a weakness is unmitigated by pierce, shields are. But yeah, minus 45% weakness, that's enough to change like a 10 pip hit's worth of damage to a 5 pips hit worth of damage. And because of how multiplication works too, a minus 45 in the formula is a big difference. I mean, once upon a time it did more damage, I think a little bit more, and it also put a 90 weakness, which, like, holy crap, that's just like their next spell does no damage pretty much. But I mean, this is a solid single hit, nice bundle of damage that allows Fire to play defense while also maintaining its offense. It's a good hit. Per Fire standards, it's a little weak, but that's okay. That utility of essentially buying you more time is incredibly useful. There's kind of this weird effect where as enemies' health gets higher, Ifrit becomes more useful. Because yes, you can one-shot things even in like Azteca Chrysalis, but to do so you're having to feint and then potent feint, blade, sharpened blade. And while that's all doable and very possible, sometimes enemies can actually out-tempo you and just do too much damage. You're Fire, after all. You are very squishy. And Ifrit is this really nice stopgap that lets you make progress, get a great hit off, and also severely limit the opponent's next hit in terms of their damage. Because minus 45 is crazy. That's a ton. And, you know, if you have a shield onto or a fortify, that just amplifies it all the further. It's great. Don't worry, the irony of the Gif is not lost on me. If you can't tell from the symbol, this spell is not available in PvP anymore. With this path, at least. And this is in PvP, and that's the minus 90 weakness. Which, hey, I did a little bit of tournament PvP back when Ifrit and Fire in general wasn't nerfed. Which, hey, Fire's still, like, really great right now in PvP, but, I mean, that's always liable to change. The meta always changes, but, yeah, back then, whew, that was the thing. You had Ifrit, you had King Art. So if they stun blocked, you went for Ifrit. If they didn't stun block, you'd go for Art. And then you'd hit them with the spell that shall not be named for now. But yes, Ifrit, fantastic spell. And now we have Hephaestus. Now this is an interesting one. It went from Ifrit that does a little less damage per pip compared to Fire's average, to one that does quite a bit less damage per pip. But Hephaestus is interesting in that it's a hit and bubble that's 5 pips, where most of them are 4. So there's an inherent downside to that, but it actually does some pretty good damage. We're talking 340 to 420 for 5 pips, which isn't amazing. I'd say in general for Fire, that's like 3.5 pips worth of damage. The variance is pretty bad. But when you put that 3.5 pips with a 2 pip value of a bubble, now it's looking pretty good. It's not bad. And I think pip convert is something Fires absolutely should run in PvE. And they often will. Sometimes you give it up for better stats, but Hephaestus Synergize is great with those. You know, just like with Frost Feather and Ice, hit and bubbles in general are great. Hephaestus, unlike Frost Feather, actually does damage. We're not comparing the two, obviously, because it's within the realm of their own schools. Hephaestus is hands down the best hit and bubble. There is no competition, but that utility of potentially breaking a shield, hitting through a weakness, which Fires don't like dealing with weaknesses, while setting up a bubble, that's great. It really is. Fire is the Pierce school, so maybe they have a tower shield. Pierce the tower shield a good little bit, and you hit with Hephaestus, you're actually getting some pretty decent chip while setting up a bubble and getting rid of a shield. Then again, Fire has better ways to get around shields, but still. But yeah, that utility of hitting through a weakness, hitting through a shield, getting some chip damage, setting up a bubble, Very, very nice. I don't think any schools hit and bubble will ever be like below the top 20 because they're all just fantastic utilities. Niche, sure, but the application is so often that I would argue that that niche utility is very, very valuable. And Hephaestus for fire in particular, pretty decent damage. Most hit and bubbles do like 2-ish pips worth of damage, sometimes even less. Hephaestus says, nah, that's okay. We're just gonna give you a pretty decent hit and a very good utility. Because yeah, fires love having their bubble up, but sometimes you don't want to spend a turn to get the bubble up. And Hephaestus lets you hit. You know, if you're sitting on pips particularly, hit, get rid of a weakness, get rid of a shield, set up a bubble. It's great. But yeah, I mean, it's just simply a fantastic spell. I don't know, not too much else to say about it. I mean, it's Heffy, bro. Everyone loves Heffy. Next, we are at number 10. We have White Heart Fire. Now, ooh, if I had any credibility left, there he goes. So, I mean, is this spell too high? Yeah, but, I mean, the numbers don't lie, and I honestly don't think this spell is given enough credit. So, I mean, we're talking the exact same shell as Hephaestus. 3 pips in a school pip, which, like, school pip, whatever, schmelly. Same accuracy, and pretty much the same damage. But instead of getting a bubble, you have perfect consistency, and you get a pretty decent heal. It's not an amazing heal, but this is kind of what I was talking about with Link. Yeah, if, like, Power Link healed around 500, 600-ish, and did some okay-ish damage per pip, then yeah, I'd be okay with that. But, so Whiteheart sacrifices damage for a pretty decent heal. 645, that's not bad. It's a heal over time, so it does take its time to take its full effect. But, I mean, just, like, think of it together. It's pretty good. In terms of healing per pip, it is below average of what 5 pips should be giving you. That's 1,000. But, I mean, when you take that in consideration with the damage as well, you think about it, like I said, hitting through a shield, breaking a weakness, hitting through a weakness, breaking a shield, and then also healing yourself, hey, it's not bad, and it is a relevant heal. As you get further in the game, more heal boost, it becomes even better. Once again, we're talking about that playing defense while playing offense, and sometimes fire just needs a little bit more time in battles, and this is a heal that's significant enough to buy some time. My fire went the full 9 miles and actually learned a Radical or whatever it's called. That gives heals 150 extra, and I mean, that's just funny at that point, but I don't know. Pragmatically speaking, you're better just learning Satyr and just casting a Satyr on yourself for 4 pips. But hey, Satyr doesn't hit at the same time. So I mean, if you want to think about it in comparison, direct comparison to Satyr, which I know we said we're talking about only within their schools, but, you know, healing per pip is different, so we're comparing it to life because, of course. And Satyr is a widely available spell for just a handful of training points. Which, I mean, I wipe my ass with training points. My fire has so many. What's he gonna do with them? PvP? Hell no. But, you know, 860, 4 pips. Whiteheart, you're healing 200 less, and for 1 more pip, but you're getting 370 fire damage, and that's not an insignificant amount of damage. That's a fair bit of chip. It's like a Sunbird. You know, if you think about it as, like, 2.5 pixies, because that's about what it is. That's 3 pips. Sunbird, 3 pips. Put them together, whew, 3 pips of value. All in this nice little neat bundle of 5 pips. It's not, like, stand out, but I honestly think this is a sleeper spell. I really want to make it work in PvP. Maybe I will one day, but man, heal counters dunk on this spell. At the same time, most people don't expect the fire to even go for a heal, so, you know. But, you know, it's a nice little niche spell that fires can actually benefit from. It's a more than relevant heal with a decent enough hit. The 5 pip asking price is kind of a little much, and maybe it should have been ranked a little bit lower. But it did get a lot of points because both damage per pip and healing per pip were considered and added. which it is below average in both, so it didn't get a billion, jillion, million points from that. We didn't even break 200 yet out of a potential 325, but I like Whiteheart. I like Whiteheart a lot. And rounding out this A tier, we have another Fire School Pip spell, and we have Brimstone repping it. So if you were paying attention to the points here, 195.89, 223.41. That's a big jump. However, the jump from Brim to the next spell is so significant that that's where the tier cutoff was. So, I mean, you could consider this an A+ tier, because it kind of is a tier above the other A tier spells. But, I mean, this is Brimstone. You know Brimstone, I know Brimstone. In PvP, this is like S tier spell. In PvE, though, it's still a really good spell. It's a great spell. We're talking above average damage per pip and applying a 30 trap afterwards. You know, we were talking a lot with Hephaestus and Whiteheart of hitting through a weakness, hitting through a shield, getting some good chip damage and another effect. This spell is cheaper, does more damage than both of those spells, and it applies something to make your next hit even better. So if you're hitting through a weakness and through a shield, you're getting some chip damage, and you're making your next hit even better. So instead of playing defense while playing offense, you're just playing straight offense. And I think that's what Fire focuses on the most, and I think that's why this spell ranked up higher. I mean, it's a great answer to weakness. It's a good finisher, because it works well with enchants. Put an epic on it, 770 damage, 4 pips, fantastic. And it even makes a great starter to some fights. Some minions you can one-shot with Brim. Sometimes maybe your hand's just not that great, and you just got a bunch of blades in a Brim. Maybe you blade into a Brim, get some good chip damage, put a trap on, and then you're not sitting on pips. I mean, Brim's just great. Isn't it, like, nice having actually impactful and good lore spells? Like actually, it's crazy. Also, like, one of my favorite animations, Brimstone just looks so intimidating, and, like, you know, if Snow Angel for ice feels like an ice plus a death spell, Brimstone feels like a fire plus death spell. It's so spooky and ethereal looking. It's great. But yeah, I mean, it's Brim. It's Brim. What more do I say? I love it. I love it. Like my fire back in the day when you could get spells from Lore Master. Literally his first spell he got from Lore Master. And that luck bled into my death, who got Deer Knight as like their second to last spell. So, hey, I got my luck up front, and I paid for it later. But anywho, let's finish this out. Alright, we are to the S tier spells. We have S for Shadow Hits minus Blast Off, I think. Was there another one? No, I think just Blast Off. So, like, Fire for the most part just got absolutely loaded with amazing Shadow spells. Some used to be, like, nightmare-inducing. They were so good, and then they got nerfed. But, yeah, I would argue, all in all, Ice's array of shadow spells were actually overall better in the realm of Ice. Because, I mean, Ice just got banger after banger, just fantastic spells all around. Fire did get Blast Off, so boo womp. But these are amazing spells that will be in your deck at some point in time, and they'll probably stay in your deck. If they don't, you might end up missing them. You know, that's just sad. But in the background, we got Wicked Flight from Bravely Default Fighting Fairy. Amazing game. Love it, love it, love it. Next slide. So we are kicking off this S tier right with Fire from Above. Like I said, big gap in points from A tier to S tier. 265. I mean, first and foremost, this might be one of the most changed spells in Wizard101 history. I mean, like, original FFA was, like, a nightmare. like, unironically should not have been in the game. I mean, those were the first shadow-enhanced spells, so the devs were just like, screw it. And they just, like, opened the floodgates of, like, school identity, blah, 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 blah. Here, take this. Here, take this. I know, like, Myth got, like, a better Earthquake, I think. I think that's what it did back then. Fire from Above was disgusting. Storm got, like, a better Storm Lord, more or less, so on and so forth, but... And we saw Ices with Abominable Weaver was disgusting on launch. Still great now, and just like FFA, it beat the allegations. It's still a great spell, fantastic, and its damage is unparalleled. nothing compares to the raw, unfiltered damage from Fire from Above. 1425 base damage. Like, that's not a typo. 1425. But it's not a typo. Over 3 ticks, over 6 rounds. I think that might be the longest damage over time effect in the game. So, I mean, cool, you're keeping traps off your enemy, or shields off your enemy, but you're also keeping traps off them. And this spell does not synergize with traps whatsoever. I don't care if you're Napta scaring, I don't care if you're fueling, fainting, 0-pip trap, elemental trap, they do not work with this spell flat out. This spell is a blade-only spell. It has this weird, like, secondary effect if it puts 3 plus 20 damage over time traps on the enemy, which are immediately used the following turn. And, I mean, okay. So, like, the base damage isn't 1425, it's, like, marginally higher. 1/6 of that 1425 is increased by 20%. Cool. I don't know. It's such a marginal increase in overall damage that I don't even know why it's there. I guess just because shadow hits have to do something besides just damage, because old Fire from Above was so hilarious, I have to mention it. We are talking release shadow spells. They were all hilarious in their own ways, but man, Fire from Above was a cut above, in contention for the best shadow spell, probably along with like a bomb. They were both absurd, at least in PvP, because I mean Glowbugs was insane too, but mostly in a PvE environment. But yeah, 1100 to 1300 base damage, but it was a hit. It was an immediate hit. It was in a single bundle. 1100 to 1300 straight up base damage, and it put a fuel on the enemy. So not only did it hit like an absolute dump truck, it made your next 3 damage hits, ticks, whatever they may be, even stronger. It was crazy. It was just straight up absurd. It was so broken. It did get nerfed big time, and then it got nerfed to like the other shadow spell, which hasn't shown up yet, it's damage. And its utility was it just put a singular 25 trap on the enemy after hitting, which, I mean, hey, that was nice. It was just like a beefy Brimstone, but like the whole point of Brimstone's like utility is it works better at a lower pip hit. But yeah, then they changed it again to make it overtime, and then it wasn't that great. Actually, it was like 1,000 damage, which sounds like a lot, but it kind of wasn't that great. And the utility, I think, was still the trap. I can't remember. But now this is what we have, because they decided to make a lot of damage over time spread over different ticks. So each one of those ticks, or it used to just be one tick that did like damage over 3 or 5 rounds or something. Now it's 3 separate ticks. And due to that, they upped the damage. And now Fire from Above has this very undeniable like throne of fire spells of just the most straight up damage. You are completely omitting traps, but in terms of just blading and hitting, no spell will ever do the kind of damage Fire from Above will. 1 FFA is stronger than a max pip Judgment or an 11 pip Heckhound. That's absurd. It's absurd. It's crazy. Actually, yeah, well, no, it's technically lower than 1 pip Heckhound, but the traps make it slightly stronger. I mean, the death by 1,000 cuts is admittedly kind of funny, but yeah, the damage being broken up into 18 separate ticks, man, I don't know. Shields will never be a problem with this spell, but in general, they're not for fire anyways, but you cannot use traps. You are completely omitting that. But yeah, if you just want pure unfiltered damage, FFA is here. Completely dunks on Storm Triton. It's so funny. I mean, what do I say? It's FFA. If it was old FFA, like the original FFA, number 1. Actually, no, number 2. But, like, holy crap, that spell was so funny. It was so funny. And that's in the realm of those original Shadow Enhanced hits, which all of them were funny to some degree. But yeah, Fire from Above is so funny. A bomb was even better, but like, man, Fire from Above gave it a legitimate run for its money in just like the comedy department. But yeah, GIF looks great, and I'm happy about that because I love the animation in the spell. I do miss when that big old bucket of coals dropped, and I'd see the enemy take like 20,000 damage. Nowadays, they just kind of take the damage. Death by 1,000 cuts. Omayo Shinderu. So, yeah. And I mean, hey, like, yeah, enemies aren't going to remove the ticks probably, so you're good on that front, but yeah. Boop-a-doop. Number 7, we have Scald. And this is a really slept-on spell. This might get me some flack, like, this spell should be higher, and to some extent, or lower, and to some extent, I can see that. Like, above FFA, that seems crazy. Scald is crazy. Like, it's criminally underrated. And when you get Scald, oh man, it already has a better alternative when it's introduced. So some people could say it's dead on arrival, but it's really not. Because you're paying an extra pip compared to that spell, and you're getting like 200 more damage. And sometimes you want that little bit of extra damage. Fire, like I said, really needs time, so you're sacrificing time for damage. But it also gets around shields compared to that spell, so it has that niche. And I mean, the damage per pip is just, oof, oof. 525 to all enemies? Like, damn. And the animation's fast too, bonus points. It's boring, but hey, it's fast. I mean, it's just amazing damage per pip. Once you factor in that the boost, we're talking 1050 damage for 5 pips. That's really good. I can't call it unparalleled because there's a spell even better than that later. But I mean, Blade into Scald will kill just about any mob fight prior to Avalon. Which Blade into the other spell that I haven't mentioned yet might not necessarily. But the problem is, in the time it takes for Scald to do its damage, you could just cast another spell. So it is overshadowed, but the numbers just do not lie for this spell. It's here because of the damage per pip, because of the potential utility, and the relevance of its damage threshold is very, very good. It does kind of have this weird spot of the spell that hits all before the spell is immediate and it's cheaper, and the spell that hits all after the spell has the same DOT utility, but it also has an initial hit, and it hits like a 18-wheeler. But Scald is great. Scald is so underrated, and it makes me sad. My Fire was using the spell even before it got buffed, and even back then it was fantastic. With the buff, I mean, it's really good. It's really good. Anywho. So number 6, we have Scorching Scimitars. Now this is interesting, because for Ice, Climaclysm made it pretty high. And that's because Ice kind of lacked like single target hits around that range. Fire does too, and Scorching Scimitars actually gets a little bit of a boost too, because Ice had a bomb, which I could very well see myself waiting a pip for as Ice to do more damage than Climaclysm and also get that nice shield utility. Scorching Scimitars doesn't really have that issue for a while. Because yeah, prior to the FFA change, this spell would have been way lower. When FFA did a billion jillion damage for no reason, I was never using Scimitars. Never. But nowadays, it's a powerful single hit in a school that kinda wants those. I mean, we're talking almost 900 damage for 4 pips and a Shadow Pip. In general, I don't dock spells for needing a Shadow Pip, because usually by the time you want to cast them, you probably have one. Scimitars might actually be a little too fast in that regards, which is why I don't give it a ton of points for being a low pip shadow hit. At the same time, I'm not docking points, but I mean, it does get eclipsed by a later shadow hit, which is more expensive, but in terms of shadow pips, I kinda am okay with that. The Divine mechanic is so terrible and has no relevance whatsoever. This spell is here because it hits like a truck, nice price, comes at a good time, and I mean, when you get it, I don't think Fire has any better alternatives in terms of single target hits, because we're talking about damage that's a little bit better than King Artorias, and I think that's your best immediate single target undivided hit. I mean, yeah. Unfortunately for me, my fire was using unnerfed FFA, and by the time they changed that spell, I had better spells than scimitars, so spell kind of got shafted a bit, but these things happen. But, you know, if we're looking at the scores, too, very close, 265, 265.45, 269.55. These spells deserve their S tier because they are all fantastic spells. Scimitars, no exception. Great spell. Fun animation. It looks a whole lot better if you turn the bloom off, which is true for this game in general, but yeah. I like Scorching Scimitars. Beforehand, not a fan. Nowadays, you know, I'll look its way. Rhyme. Next spell. We got Raging Bull. I mean, Shadow pipped the tier, baby. Hey, you guys remember Blast Off and, like, doing 900 damage to all enemies after, like, you're done reading a book? No, this is Raging Bull. Raging Bull is like, hey, you want a strong AoE 6-pip Shadow hit? This is me. And I mean, it's just the best single hit AoE fire has to offer. If you want burst damage to all enemies, this is full stop your best choice. Unless you want to play chess and blast off 8 years beforehand and take a time machine to when that spell actually does its damage. And fire does have stronger AoEs, as we've seen in Rain of Fire, but this is the best you get that doesn't have its damage split or its damage deferred. And in fact, it actually doesn't want to defer your damage because its utility is that it detonates the damage over time, which, will you ever use that? Probably not. It has synergy with Scald and, like, another spell that's coming later on, but, like, even then, like, who cares? Honestly, the Mantle was better, and we talked about how Mantles aren't great, but yeah, Raging Bull kind of beat the Shadow Audit allegations, where a lot of Shadow spells kind of got nerfed majorly. Raging Bull kind of, like, took it in stride, because I want to say it was, like, 775 to 900 before. Yeah, it didn't get hit too hard. It's not bad. It's not bad at all. I don't like the damage range, but when you look at the percentages, they're actually not too bad. But, because, yeah, 10% of 710 is 71. 71 times 2 is 142. We're looking at around, like, 20-ish% variance, so you're just below that Balanced Blade threshold. And Raging Bull would have been a lot higher if it had perfect variance. Think about Freeze Ray with the Ice tier list compared to Snow Barrage. I mean, Snow Barrage was the best ice spell. Freeze Ray was pound for pound stronger than Snow Barrage, but variance. So that little bitty difference kind of makes the difference in the end. But yeah, I mean, it's Raging Bull. Has one of the coolest animations ever. In general, the Polaris spells kind of just, like, were bangers after bangers. Except Wings of Fate, we don't talk about that one. But yeah, it's Raging Bull. You love it, I love it, it's great. And number 4, we got Phantasmania. Has an exclamation mark, just like Blast Off, but you couldn't tell if Blast Off because I wasn't very excited about that spell. But hey, Wallaroo. It's just, like, another undeniably great spell that comes, like, super late in the game. Like, oh man, if I had this at, like, level 50 or, God forbid, 30, 35, whew. Well, I mean, Archmastery is like a 50 mechanic, so, like, level 50, that'd be pretty neat. Even then, I don't think the tier list would have changed too much, but, you know, would have been neat. Yeah, I mean, it's just an immediate Scald, pretty much. It does 40 less damage than Scald, same pip cost. I mean, it's great consistent damage, great price. It's the best immediate turn 1 AoE damage that Fire is capable of, beating out even Dragoon Amulet. And turn 1 as in you just start the battle and click your buttons. Fire obviously has stronger AoEs, but I mean, hey, pound for pound, this is not bad at all. It's not bad at all. Slap an epic on it, 785, turn 1. That's good. That's real good. It's a good spell. I'm happy to see it. It has a fun animation. Reminds me of, like, Man, that one Bullseye game from Neopets with like the snail looking guy. Oh man, wasn't that just called Bullseye? I don't remember. But yeah, it reminds me of that with like the Bullseye targets they set up and stuff. It's fun. It's a fun spell. In general, Walroo's animations for the spells were spot on. And I mean, there's not too much to talk about with this spell because it's very self-explanatory. It's just very self-evident. It's amazing. 273.18. Great score. Great score, great spell. Would have been nice to get it earlier. Like, yeah. Unfortunate, but hey, great spell. Speaking of great spells, but this one you do get early, is Meteor Strike. I mean, you know Meteor, I know Meteor. Even Malistaire knows Meteor, and he's a death boss. It's his second favorite spell next to Dark Sprite. I mean, it's Meteor Strike, guys. It's the king of 4-pip AoEs, and it's not even close. The second strongest is Humunga Frog, and Humunga Frog is a good, like, 30 damage weaker. Something like that. Yeah. I mean, Meteor Strike is so good. On average, does 5 more damage than a 4-pip Tempest. Tempest is consistent, though, so, I mean, that spell is obviously better. But, I mean, Meteor Strike is so great. Tried and true. This is why, like, Scald kind of is weird, because you get Meteor Strike first, and the damage is instant. Scald still has a great spot in S tier, because its damage is a lot better than Meteor Strike, but, I mean, look at it. Meteor Strike, it's just a more consistent Sunbird for 1 extra pip to double the damage. We're talking 6 pips. 6 pips worth of value in a 4-pip bundle. And I mean, once you get enchants, it just becomes even better, because you can just enchant 4-pip AoE, boom. Great. Get crit, man, you're doing like 2,800 damage round 1. I mean, I could go on and on about it. I mean, I am, I guess. I'm letting my future self do so right now, which will be the past self of me once I, like, go back to edit, so that's pretty cool. But, I mean, it's Meteor Strike, guys. I compared this to Blizzard. Blizzard 250 to 290? Blech. Blech. Meteor Strike is so good. I mean, you could, like, be pedantic, like, oh, Rat Spin is better than Meteor Strike. Shut up. Shut up. You're not getting Rat Spin unless you spend money or have a higher level wizard purposely farm for Rat Spin. Meteor Strike is given to everybody, regardless of race, gender, class, religion. None of that matters. We're all gamers. And every gamer that is a Fire Wizard gets Meteor Strike level 22. Perfect time to get it. Never stops being useful. I will argue that it kind of gets eclipsed by a spell later on, which we still haven't seen. But Meteor Strike, that 4-pip frame is just so good. Unmatched, unparalleled. It's great. It's so great. And it's so great quite often that, you know, I mentioned with Ice, I'll run like a Snow Serpent in my fast deck in case like an enemy barely lives. Fire, I'll just run a second Meteor. I'll just like Frenzy, Meteor, or Frenzy, certain spell, pass Meteor. Like, it's that good. Meteor, like, look at the animation too. It's a sick, very impactful feeling. Kinetic, that's the word I'm thinking of, animation, but it's also nice and fast. Wasn't always that way. Oh, geez, no. But yeah, Meteor is great. It's Meteor Strike. Everybody knows. Everybody knows. It's like the Astral Magic before Astral Magic. Because, I mean, I like how you just summon them through, like, these nondescript portals. It's so funny. Yeah, it's Meteor Strike. You love it. You love it. I love it. You love it. We all love it. It's great. You wumbo, me wumbo, he, she, we wumbo. Now, number 2, we got the S'more Machine. So, this right here, it's old FFA damage. And not old FFA damage, but, you know, just the second old after it got nerfed the first time. Because basically, at that point, once it got nerfed the first time, that spell and S'more Machine had the exact same damage. What differentiated the two was FFA put a singular open trap, I think it was a 25 or maybe a 30 fire trap, and S'more put 3 35 overtime traps. That was the only change, but S'more Machine you could also spellment to a 4 or 6 pip version, which differentiated it as well. But this, no spellments, is S'more Machine, and isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? Look at it. Look at it. Why don't you look at it? Look at you. Look at you. You're freaking beautiful. I mean, it's great. It's great. Look at that. 960 minimum? Oh, man. Ice who? Yeah, because we just got done doing the ice tier list, and man, 960? Did any of those spells even hit 960? Did, like, Lord of Winter even hit 960? I don't think it hit 900. Didn't it cap out like 885 or something? That's crazy. 960 to 1080 damage. Mwah. So good. So good. Consistency is surprisingly decent too. It's not perfect, but it's surprisingly decent. So lots of little points there. But I mean, we're talking an immediate 1k base for 5 pips on the school that really wants a strong single target. No DOT, no deferration, none of that kind of hit. This is your spell. S'more Machine is your spell. If you want pure unrivaled damage, death by 1,000 cuts, brew some coffee while you wait for your opponent to die, you choose FFA. If you want to kill your opponent and then, like, I don't know, make yourself some dinner or a sandwich or something, then you go S'more Machine. And I will mention the utility is also not half bad. I mean, it's just essentially giving a trap to your next damage over time, assuming it's not one of the weird, like, 5 or 6 round damage over times. Because, hey, a 35 trap isn't bad. Trap standard is 30%, so it's a little bit better with the offset. You can only use it with damage over times. And, hey, that's not bad, given the enemy actually survives. I mean, it's just straightforward. Caramel delivering bangers. Sometimes, like, I kind of wonder with Caramel because I started with Death, and the Death one is, like, really fun and techy, but otherwise it's just kind of, like, whelming. No, S'more Machine is, it's where it's at. And I'd argue it gets even better if you spellment it up to that 6-pip version, because the 4-pip version doesn't exist anymore, which I wouldn't use anyways. But, yeah, I mean, this is the gold standard of I want to do damage. I want to use traps on fire. This school known for all these traps and stuff, but just can't use them because damage over times, and it's like, this is it. Let's say hypothetically I have 0 damage whatsoever. S'more Machine plus Feint, we're looking at 1,700 damage. Just straight up. And, like, even the weakest Fire Wizard, by the time they have S'more Machine, even that one person running around with, like, crown gear from, like, a level 80 that gives universal damage, they probably have at minimum 35-40% damage, and that's really low balling it. You're already breaking 2k. Like, it's so strong. It's great. I mean, guys, it deserved its own tier. You already know what spell this is. A perfect 325 score. The second you get this spell, it's relevant. It never stops being relevant. It's absurd. It's amazing. It is S+ tier. I mean, let's just look at that gift, because you already know what it is. You already know what spell it is. It's so beautiful. That's Fire Dragon, dude. Insane damage. We're talking 975 for 7 pips. If that was single target, it would be insane. But no, it's AoE. It's everybody, with the damage per pip surpassing even that of Storm. Perfect consistency. Perfect relevance, amazing utility, because not only does it do a billion damage right off the gate, it also has a nice overtime. So hey, you know, if you don't kill him immediately, which you very well could, even with the enchant split, it does more initial than Meteor Strike will ever do. Sand Spellments, even Spellments might not do it, but I mean, it's Fire Dragon, dude. It does so much damage. Hypothetically, your opponent has a shield, your fire, you have good pierce, so that first hit's going to do a ton of damage, then the overtime's going to do another initial hit's worth of damage. I mean, they weren't the rulers of the lands for nothing. Like, this is what I think of when I think of Titan and Wizard101. I think of the Fire Dragon. Frost Giant, hey, they buffed it, it's not terrible. Hey, it's not the best, but it's pretty good. Stormlord's awesome, don't get me wrong. It is. But the Tritons are the true Titans of Storm per the canon. And I mean, Triton is hilarious. It's great. But I mean, Fire Dragon, dude. Fire Dragon. Nothing compares to Fire Dragon. And I don't think anything ever will. It is so strong. It is like one of the few spells in this game I would consider S+ tier, no doubts in my mind. This, Tempest, and maybe some others I haven't thought of yet. Ice obviously didn't get an S+ tier because it has bootleg Tempest that requires a Shadow Pip. Tempest is amazing because of when you can use it, which is literally any time. Fire Dragon, oh, dude. So once you have 4 pips, which you will before you have Fire Dragon because of Hasta, Blade Dragon kills everything. Once you have 5 pips, Sharpened Blade Dragon kills everything. Frenzy Dragon kills everything, and if it doesn't, DOT might. Or a Wand hit plus DOT, or a Meteor plus DOT, whatever you want. Fire Dragon is just so absurd. This spell got buffed. Did it need to be buffed? Not really. I think, honestly, it was great as is. It wouldn't be this high if it wasn't buffed. It's just, it's overpowered. It straight up is. It's so good. It does so much damage as an AoE. It's honestly a better option to hit bosses than, like, Elephant, Ifrit sometimes, Art sometimes. It's so strong. It's so ungodly powerful. There's not much more else that can be said. So, that's Fire Dragon. You love to see it. Amazing spell. It has a place in my heart like no other. One of my favorite spells ever. Even before the buff, it was great. The buff just, like, was the cherry on top of, like, the delicious sundae that didn't even need a cherry. There's nothing else I can say. It's Fire Dragon. It's Fire Dragon. Alright, and as some final thanks, I want to give major thanks to Wizard101 Central and the people that updated. Some of the gifts weren't there, obviously. I am not going to bite the horse that fed me, or whatever the saying goes. Huge props to them. Insane work. Very helpful. All card art and gifts were provided by them, so thank you for that. And thank you to the viewer for watching to the end of this video. Let me know your thoughts on the rankings. I'm sure there are some spells that you don't agree with. Honestly, I don't agree with either, but numbers don't lie. Numbers are numbers. But, you know, leave a like if you enjoyed the video, leave a dislike if you didn't, and hey, if you want more, let me know. You know, just give me some feedback, and I'm thinking Storm would be next. I don't know, I've been thinking about it. But, you know, show me good feedback, show me interest, and I'll make another. And then final thought, Apocalypse, which came out literally as I was recording this video. I don't know, probably like D tier. It's like a decent enough hit that like detonates 2 overtimes. So hey, it's actually useful with like most DOTs. It's better than detonate. Cool. Whatever. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed, let me know. Have yourself a great day, and see you later.